Good evening and welcome to the June 17th meeting of the City of Beacon Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Jordan Haug and I am the chair of this board. Thankful for the other board members for joining us, our attorney, secretary, and building inspector for joining us as well. As you may note, we are down one member of the board this evening. Stowe is not here. If we were to conclude a public hearing and go to a vote, as always, we need 3 positive votes of however many there are up here, as long as we have a quorum of 3. So tonight you'll need 3 of 4 for a passing of a resolution. With that being said, of course, we offer any applicant after the presentation the option to adjourn to a subsequent month to potentially have a 5-member board for the most possible votes, positive votes. With that being said, has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the May 20th, 2025 meeting? And are there any comments regarding those minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, you reviewed them, or yes, you have comments?
No, I reviewed them.
Great. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes of the May 20th, 2025 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Montos. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Judy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And so we have 2 agenda items this evening. And then can I have a motion to open the public hearing on agenda item number 1?
So moved.
Motion by Judy. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Elaine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Palmer.
Good evening, Mr. Haug, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. For the record, Taylor Palmer with the law firm of Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant. It's been a whole month since we got to hang out with each other. I see Stowe is not here this evening, probably because we kept him to the planning board meeting till about midnight last week. So sorry, Stowe. With that being said, tonight I am joined by our project architect, R.A. Siegel, as well as our civil engineer and landscape architect, Justin Dates, and our traffic consultant, Rich D'Andrea, who are both from Collier's Engineering. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we are before you this evening for a public hearing for area variance relief to set back portions of certain off-street parking spaces, which Ari will pull up in a second, contained within our proposal to redevelop the property with 2 4-story mixed-use commercial and multifamily residential buildings that will be located at 45 Beekman Street and High Street. This is a rare opportunity where we could walk outside and actually see the site, do a site visit if it wasn't raining. The hearing was duly noticed for the record, and we did provide proof to Mercedes in advance of the meeting tonight. Specifically, Justin will highlight in just a moment. I'll give you a background on all of where we are and have been for this project. But the relief being sought for this application is the placement of a minor amount of off-street parking behind one of the proposed buildings and screened, that will be screened from High Street, which parking is also adjacent to High Street as a result of the irregular shape of this lot. So the property is sort of it is a 4-sided being with connections up to Tompkins, all the way down Walcott or 9D, down Beekman, and then loops around to High Street. Before we dive into the specifics of the variance, I do want to provide you all with a brief description. He's trying to connect onto the screen, so I'll give a little background so then Arya can walk through the specifics. Just a little bit of procedural history on that point then. I'll turn first to the notable updates from the recent planning board meetings following our April 29th submittal to this board, and then we'll address the variance relief that we're here before you and any questions that you might have. So starting with the property, as I mentioned, you're right across the street, 45 Beekman. As you can see in our Exhibit A to our April 29th submittal, the property is generally located at the intersections of North Avenue, or 90, or Walcott, many names, depending on where you are in the section of the State Highway, and Beekman Street, High Street, and then Beekman Street, and then North Avenue, i.e. Route 90, and Tompkins Avenue, so that corner there. The property is comprised of 3 lots at present. That's 45 Beekman Street, which is presently improved by the 3-story commercial building and a paved driveway and parking area. Again, it connects out to Tompkins. Then we have 2 unnumbered High Street parcels and a paved, and that are currently vacant. That more recently was used for a contractor's office and storage yard, which you can see the pictures of in our submission. 45 Beekman Street itself is an irregularly shaped lot that fronts on North Avenue and Route 9D and Tompkins Avenue and Beekman Street, with an existing curb cut providing access out to Tompkins and a driveway leading through one of the High Street parcels to an existing curb cut onto Beekman Street. The The 45 Beekman Street parcel is set back and generally down the hill from Beekman Street and North Avenue roadways. The two vacant High Street parcels are similarly irregularly shaped, it's weird to say in order, with frontages on Beekman Street and High Street. And then Exhibit A, again, shows the most recent use there as a contractor's yard. All three lots that are involved in the application before you are in the city's linkage, or L, zoning district, and a small portion of the northwest corner of the 45 Beekman Street, excuse me, the High Street lot, is in the R1 7.5 district, and that is an existing driveway. That's essentially where the existing driveway is out to Tompkins. The premises is located across the street from City Hall, and the surrounding area includes commercial, multifamily, including high-density multifamily, residential, including at The View, the West End Lofts, River Ridge Views, and the single-family developments along High Street, in addition to retail uses on the city's Main Street. So the project, as I mentioned, is for two 4-story buildings that are mixed use in furtherance of the linkage district's purposes, which is providing increased residential density and commercial uses along Beekman Street that lead into the city's waterfront from Main Street. So that's directly out of the comprehensive plan. The new building program includes 64 apartments and approximately 13,670 square feet of commercial retail office space, which uses are permitted as of right in the linkage district. Both subsurface and surface parking areas comprising 91 off-street spaces are proposed to service our project, with surface parking behind the new buildings and spaces provided within the garage level beneath the 4-story building located at 45 Beekman Street. We refer to that building up closer to 9D as the Beekman building, and then the High Street building is the one closer to High Street. The off-street parking that is located behind the building on High Street parcels, or the High Street building, is the subject of our instant variance relief. So it's not no parking relief being sought for the Beekman Street building, but for the High Street building. Specific to the variance, the proposed parking spaces and the drive aisles throughout the project are 9 feet by 18 feet and 24-foot wide drive aisles in order to comply with the City of Beacon's code, and for consistency with the Dutchess County Greenway Connection recommendations and New York State DEC stormwater objective for impervious surfaces. The applicants previously provided the planning board with a parking memorandum from Mr. DeAndrea, confirming that the proposed off-street parking facilities conform to the city's recently adopted parking regulation updates that changed it from being a minimum number of parking to a maximum and a minimum number of parking spaces. As detailed in that plan, the shared parking analysis prepared for the project showed that we only needed 88 parking spaces, and that would be appropriate for the needs to service the project. Notably, this figure was conservative because it didn't account for potential internal trips in the residential units and the commercial spaces, with the proximity, of course, to the train station that the project is. In direct response to comments, though, from the city's traffic consultant in November of last year, the applicants did add additional parking spaces so that we now total 91. So 88 is what we showed as being required, 91 is the total that the city traffic consultant requested. As we explained to the planning board at that time, while additional spaces have been added to satisfy the city's consultant, we are comfortable that 88 parking spaces was sufficient to accommodate the parking needs based on the project and the city code requirements. Procedurally, the variance is proposed in furtherance of the applicant's pending site plan subdivision, which is for a lot merger application, and we have those applications pending before the planning board. The project is a type 1 action in accordance with seeker, so coordinated review was done where the planning board served as the lead agency. Aha, we did it. Technology. The board previously indicated, your board I should say, previously indicated that you had no objection to the planning board serving as lead agency. That was back in March of 2024, just for context of how long we've been reviewing the application with the board to get it into the shape that you're seeing up on the screen before you. After conducting an exhaustive seeker analysis and studies and reports at its May 13th meeting, the planning board ultimately adopted a seeker negative declaration and a local waterfront revitalization program consistency determination, or LWRP, easier to say, consistency determination for the project. That closed the seeker public hearing and then formally referred this application to you all for consideration of the parking relief. Concurrent with these applications, the project has a pending application to purchase surplus right-of-way property along Beekman Street from the state. That allowed us to bring the building further away from High Street and move it closer to Beekman Street. That was in coordination with recommendations of the city planner and the board itself. Through that process, the applicant seeks to reclaim certain portions of the Beekman Street right-of-way that were apportioned by the state during urban renewal in furtherance of bringing those buildings closer to Beekman Street and the pedestrian activation of that frontage, all of which is in conformance with the city planning objectives and, of course, the comprehensive plan. This effort reduced the variance relief as well that would be required or needed based on that additional land that the applicant is obtaining from the state. So that made this really the minimum relief necessary for this application. Now to the variance. The applicants respectfully request that the board grant the area variance relief from section 223-41.21 F1. Right. That's parking locations and quantity, to be more specific. All of the off-street parking shall be located behind, underneath, or to the side of the building, all of which is accommodated here on our site. The note in that subsection says, if on the side, remember it's the side of the building, this we're dealing with just the High Street building. If on the side of the building, it shall be located at least 40 feet from any property line that fronts on a street and be screened by brick, stone wall, hedge, ornamental fence, or other landscaping that maintains continuity of the street and the screened cars. So again, the goal of this regulation was to put cars and vehicles behind buildings. The sort of position we find ourselves in is that we are behind, but we're also to the side because of the shape and the catty corner of this lot on High Street. This section mandates certain parking setbacks to effectuate the Linkage District's purposes of improving the pedestrian landscape along Beekman Street and Main Street to the train station, creating that, bringing the buildings up and putting parking behind, which is proposed. As is more fully shown on our dimension plan and on the screen before you, is a very small portion of the proposed off-street parking area that's generally located on a High Street behind the building. That's what Aria just had up on the screen. Given the existing irregular configuration of the property, the portion of the off-street parking that is located behind the building is also off to the side. That leads us to the request before you for that area to the left of the yellow line that shows you the portions of the parking spaces that are generally located within that additional setback. This setback restriction is generally applied to off-street parking, right? Just the phrase off-street parking, an undefined term in your zoning code, instead of more precisely referencing, for example, parking space or parking area, the latter of which includes parking spaces and passageways pertinent thereto. So we're sort of accounting for the whole area within that because it says off-street parking, so we don't know if that's space, area, or otherwise. This distinction is relevant because the distance between the property line and High Street and the paved bump out for the maneuvering into the parking spaces differ. So the setback to the spaces is different than the bump out to be able to turn around in that corner of the property. But in abundance of caution, the applicants are seeking a variance relief that will apply to the paved area nearest to High Street and the property line. This area is located closer to the approximately 8 feet from the property line, whereas the nearest parking space is actually 17 feet from the lot line. Accordingly, the applicants respectfully request a variance of 32 feet where 40 is required for this specific setback. Again, for the side, not for the rear, albeit these parking spaces are behind the building in relation to this application. As you all know, as High Street goes up quite significantly as soon as you sort of enter that area along High Street. Justin's going to show that more in depth and show you the landscaping plan that's associated with this, which is heavily screened, and then as of last Tuesday, will be more heavily screened as a context of comments from the public and from the board itself. And Justin will get into what that means, both in size, what sort of density of those inclusions for screening, and other implementations to help further that. Relief from the parking setback is only sought for the portion of the parking area along High Street. The parking located between Beekman and High Street is set back more than 40 feet from the property line because of our application with DOT, so no relief for the property is otherwise required for this site. So with that, I'll have Justin come up and speak to that off-street parking area as well as the screening, which includes dozens of evergreen trees, canopy trees, evergreen shrubs, and otherwise to help provide adequate screening, and again, as the property heads up High Street. So with that, Justin?
Good evening. Justin Dates, Colliers Engineering and Design. So I was going to touch on the landscaping that we have directly adjacent to these parking spaces and along the High Street frontage and vicinity of that parking bump out there. One thing to note, since we had submitted to your board, the ZBA here, we did make some minor modifications to the installation size of some of the evergreen species that we have in here. We did that once as a response to the planning board comment. We were having further discussions, as Mr. Taylor Palmer mentioned, to increase those even more so. So we're, again, working on getting a more established screen right out of, right from installation. All right, so we don't have to wait as long for the mature heights to come into play.
We don't
Sorry.
have this, oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we don't have this.
No, this is, what's being shown here is what was provided to your board. Yep. So I was just going to touch on the couple of plant species that
This is the two lots on High Street? One facing Beekman, the other one facing High Street?
Correct. This, on the bottom corner is that High Street building that we're referring to.
Yeah,
And then just behind that is the parking area behind the building that we're speaking about.
Ariel, zoom out. There you go. So what this does not show is the internal lot lines that exist, but they're all being removed. So this is the overall resultant lot. This
that's the overall.
that's
An
the
overall
overall what it will be. It'd be one lot
Thank you. I
resultant.
was trying to tie it to the satellite view.
Yes.
Got it, thank you.
So yes, they will all be joined into one.
Yep. Judy, is that where you were going?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. So within the vicinity of the parking spaces adjacent to High, we've created an evergreen buffer that is right on our property. You see that heavy black line is where our property line is in reference to, on the west side, you have the curb line of High Street. There's a sidewalk, right, that comes down that. And then behind that, there will be a space for, it's like a swale, so drainage can flow down behind the sidewalk area, and we tie that into our drainage system for the site. So just behind that swale is where we're proposing to put our evergreen buffer, right? So directly adjacent to those spaces that we were speaking about, we have a couple of different evergreen trees that we'll be looking to install there. We have a headside juniper, we have some Norway spruce, and then also green giant arborvitaes. Okay, so all the juniper will reach a maximum of about like 15 to 20 feet at maturity. Norway spruce, you're talking about like potential for 40 feet, and then also the green giant arborvitaes also has potential of 40 feet. So added this, obviously that's not what is installed, that installed height. So what we're looking to install these at right now is the juniper, looking at 6 to 8 feet in height. The Norway spruce would be 8 to 10 feet. And then the green giant arborvitae are 6 to 8 feet. Okay, so taller than me minimum to 8 feet. So we look to place those adjacent to those parking areas, again, to provide that screening, that buffering from the High Street views into those parking spaces there.
Do you have the previous submission that you had prior to the comments from the planning board? I assume there was a less dense.
No, it's not. The only difference is the installation height. The layout and density was the same. So for example, the Norway spruce we had proposed at 6 to 8 feet. If you look on your plan, that's what it is. Our latest submission to the planning board was the 8 to 10 increase, okay? And then on the green giant arborvitae, on your plan, it shows 5 to 6 feet, and that has already been changed to a 6 to 8 foot minimum. So the overall density and layout of that planting design along High Street did not change. It was just getting larger installation sizes right out of the gate.
And what is the expectation over time as far as height for those?
So the juniper is 15 to 20 feet at maturity. Norway spruce and the arborvitae there could be a 40-foot height at maturity. Obviously that's within time. Sure. But so that's why we're trying to get some higher heights at installation to try to promote this buffer in a more expedited fashion. Any questions on that portion? One thing just, I wanted to just make sure we mentioned that the bump out or the piece of the parking area that's 8 feet off the property line, that allows for, so that last spot that's closest to High Street, right, that vehicle can pull into the space, and then it gives it maneuverability to back out. If you have just a straight curb there, it becomes kind of a almost impossible 30-point turn to kind of get out of that space. So the reason that is slightly closer is just to give that added maneuverability for that last parking stall itself.
I did just want to add one point, just as we're looking at this plan, and sorry to interrupt Justin's presentation, but if you look at the property line in relation to the sidewalk and then the road, so we're just talking about a setback to the property line, because that's how it's written in the code. The intention, as we've read it through and how it was applied, was really applying it to Beekman Street, but at the same time, whether it's a side yard or a front yard, and getting these parking spaces behind, it was from passersby, whether it's road or street or residential or other neighborhood, other properties. Again, we're set back, we're requesting the variance from the property line. We are much more significantly set back from the sidewalk and then the roadway than we are from the exact property line. So it's, when we're looking at this for context of the setback, it's also fair to actually consider where it is in relation to the actual public spaces and not just that. So the actual property line doesn't align directly with the sidewalk.
And you've taken care that the circumference of the trees won't go onto the sidewalk, so that you'll be able to walk on the sidewalk?
Some of the canopies, the one, we have a red oak that's on, right in line with where that bump out is. That does show some canopy encroachment over
Yeah,
the
that's the
sidewalk.
canopy. I'm talking about the shrubs that are,
Oh, yes.
that are gonna be
Yeah.
bigger at the bottom than at the top.
Correct, yes.
And make sure they clear the sidewalk so that
They
people can
are,
walk.
yeah, since, to Mr. Palmer's point, the curb line of High Street to our property line is about 13 feet. So the plant material that we're speaking about is really right on our property line or into the project site. So that they're, we're expecting no intrusion of those evergreen species onto the sidewalk, which I think is what you're asking.
So that's been planned for.
That's correct, yep.
Thank you.
The only thing I have a question with looking at the plan, particularly this one, you see where the 2 circles are?
Yep,
Are those plantings in the right of way?
no.
They're not?
No, the trunk is on our property.
Okay.
And that circle that you see is the canopy, or like the drip line.
Okay.
Those particular trees are thornless honey locust.
Okay.
So it's a canopy tree, like shade type of tree. So yes, so
So the little circles on the left side of the dark line are not in the right of way?
they're just like right on the property.
Okay. I just wanted you guys to be aware of that in case that comes up, tonight or at the planning board. It might have to move a foot or whatever the case is.
Yeah, we could definitely accommodate that if that's.
Just wanted, it stood out to me, so I wanted to clear that up.
Sure.
Taylor, can you clarify something for me? So the building is in the bottom left, right? That's a parking lot above it, right?
All right, if you have the renderings that you want to bring up, just to show us, there's 2 buildings. There's the Beekman
Yeah.
Street building, which brings you back up to the corner, right, the
Yeah, let's-
intersection?
Let's just talk about
The High Street building, yep. So Ari is going to bring that visual up for you to show you. So the High Street building, so there is underground parking below the 45 Beekman Street building, which
Yeah.
is built into the
That
hill.
I'm good with.
Yep,
Let's just focus on High Street.
Yep.
And just north of the building on High Street.
so you're seeing now the parking with the bump out. This is the
So
visual.
how much parking is there?
How many spaces?
There's 6 spaces.
6.
6.
In that area, yeah.
So you have 6 on-site parking, you're asking for 91 off-street.
Correct.
Okay, I just needed that clarification. Thank you.
Right, our study we presented to the planning board that 88 was all that was necessary based on their
Yeah,
new
yeah.
formula. 91 is what is provided in response to the city consultant. So yes, some of these are above ground, but there's others that are below the 45 Beekman building.
So So the commercial space, people will be parking behind it? Behind the commercial space?
So they could, there's also, of course, on-street parking along Beekman, there's other parking areas throughout. Generally speaking, I guess, maybe RA can speak to otherwise, but yes, there's opportunity for both. The idea is that it's shared parking. And actually, we were just going to have Rich do that analysis, so that's our next kind of talking point to the traffic study and the parking analysis that went into this. Do you want to get, yep. So with that, I'll turn it to Rich, because that might answer some of these specific questions about where cars come in, come out, the limitations regarding same, how that interacts with the overall site operations and the like.
So, to answer your question directly, Rich D'Andrea, Colliers Engineering and Design. To answer your question directly, the intention is that all 91 on-site spaces will be fully shared. So, in the evening, there'll be primarily residential parking in there. During the middle of the day, when residential people go off to work, there'll be parking available for the commercial spaces. And that all the parking on the site will be fully shared. There's no reserve parking for the residences, there's no reserve parking for the commercial spaces.
So there's 6 parking on the lot by the High Street building.
Correct.
There's how many under the north?
Beekman.
Beekman? How many under that?
41 under the building.
Okay. And then you're asking for 91 off-street in addition to all of that?
No. We have
Inclusive.
91 spaces on our site provided.
How do they add up?
Yeah,
There's
how do-
41 under the building.
Yes,
There's the 6 in the lot behind the High Street building.
yes.
And then we also have parking, surface parking behind Beekman Street that makes up the other 44 spaces.
So that all totals 91?
Correct.
So if you have all that on your plans, what are you asking for then?
We have, is it 3 or 4 spaces? We have 4 spaces that are within the 40-foot setback from the property line along High Street that aren't, I guess, per code shouldn't be there.
So
we're
that's the
asking for
variance you're
relief.
asking for, is for those 4 spaces?
The code requires that you put parking behind or to the side of the building. We're behind the building, but we're also to the side of another building. So as a consequence, it was deemed that we needed a variance for the setback specific to that encroachment, not from Beekman Street, but from the High Street, because we're also to the side of the other building. So we're behind High Street, but we're to the side of the Beekman building.
Got it.
So that yellow line, if you,
Yes.
in theory, well, there's 4 spots on the wrong side of the yellow line?
Correct.
Right. And so, yeah, okay.
It's not 4 full spots, it's 3 and change.
Sure.
Plus the pull-out, but
Sorry,
it's the distance rather than the number of spaces. We're not asking for a parking variance,
Yeah.
we're asking for a parking variance.
It
Setbacks.
it wasn't intuitive to me as I was reading this.
It's not a numerical variance, we're not asking for we're not
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
for 88 versus 91, we're asking for the setback
On the 4.
on the side, for those 3.5 spaces that are, that go into that side yard setback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think just to clarify the parking itself, so the city code the recently updated city code has a maximum allowable parking on the site. That's what's provided in the city code now.
Yeah.
So when you apply that to the residential and commercial, you come up with a total of 108 spaces that's maximally allowable. The planning board has the ability to reduce that based on different factors, including an engineering study that shows shared parking amongst the spaces, which is one of the things that we took into account, as well as the fact that we have on-site bicycle storage and we're close to the train station, so all those things get factored in. So as part of our analysis, we did what's called a shared parking analysis to identify what's the actual demand for parking at the site. And generally, it was based on Institute of Transportation Engineers data to kind of identify this is what our demand is, this is how it's utilized over the course of the day. So IT identifies hourly demand distributions over the course of the day, because it's going to vary based on residential versus commercial, and then commercial is going to peak more in the middle of the day. In the evening, residential pretty much peaks overnight, right? So we're taking into account the fluctuations there. When we do that analysis, we came up with a total parking demand of 88 spaces, right? The city's traffic consultant then reviewed that analysis, and based on their slightly different interpretation of some things, they asked us to rerun it, and basically we came up with a new number of 91 spaces, and that's what we're providing on the site. So less than what the city code is maximally allowing, but we believe that that's the correct number for total spaces. That will be our maximum ever needed.
And when you talk about your study, you also looked at like shared day versus evening based on traffic. You're talking about the residential versus the commercial uses here.
Correct.
You're not talking about sharing with the train station as an example for commuters.
No,
That has nothing to do with this here at all.
right.
Perfect, thank you.
How many residential units and how many storefront units, business units are there in the project as a whole?
Yeah, we'll let REA mention those.
And just the 3.5 spots, I see 2.5 at the top of the curve where you did the bump out for the turnaround. Which one of those is a parking space? The one all the way to the left?
So on the top here, see that
The very top?
yeah, where that one in the circle is?
Okay,
That the line cuts through about like the western third of that particular
Okay.
spot.
That's intended to be like almost like a parallel parking space, sort of.
okay.
Is just for as far as mechanism works, and for my mind, is the 91, I guess, the ruling? Is that, in other words, you came up with 88, the city came up with 91. Could you have asked for a variance to 88? Would that be another alternative?
Yeah, the irony here is if you said no to the setback, we'd go to the planning board to work with them on the number, and if they said, yes, you have to have 91, we would then have to seek a variance for you numerically for the number of parking spaces rather than the setback per se.
Right.
So it would be, that would feasibly create that unless there was other information provided to the traffic consultant that changed their mind, so to speak, but we tried that, and we don't take credit, for example, we can't, of other conservative analyses. There's other ways that Rich can explain it in the context of folks that walk to the train, or that there are other ways that these parking analyses, we do it conservatively. It takes into account everything, the views, Edgewater coming online, all of the projects that have been approved. The analysis has to consider all of that, both from a traffic and parking perspective, mainly for traffic, right, not the parking aspect. And this project has actually worked to create, and Rich can kind of go through some of those signal modifications and other things that will bring these, tell them about the system. I'm just going to butcher it here, but they have, computer systems that can change how these traffic lights work all the way to the bridge, and that's coming online right down to Main Street. So all of those are being sort of worked in. It's not because of this project. This project is just one of the drops in the overall bucket that lead to any traffic in this area, but the project itself, because of the implementation measures, is working through that. We even looked at turn lanes here, an additional turn lane coming off of 9 going down to the train station, coordinated with DOT. We reserved lands that if in the future DOT does want that, if there's another project that comes on or anything else like that. So this project has accounted for all of that, including bringing this building up to the frontage to really align it with the Beekman Street, which was envisioned in the comp plan. I mean, the applicant had to literally work with the state to buy their land to make this project and move this building away from the back of the property up to the frontage. So there was a lot that went in to make this come together.
If you had your number, the 88 number, would you not need this variance?
We would still, I think, need it for approximately one space, or it would be a lesser variance from a setback perspective. But again, the way we look at this, as far as what variance we're seeking, we're asking it to the property line. The reality of where even that bump out, which is not a parking space, is set back from the public way, or where you'd walk by the site. It is further than what we're, of course, to our property line. And again, the way that this code section is written is really speaking to and trying to encourage parking behind the building, which it is from Beekman and the linkage between Main Street and the train station. This is, again, and it was a zoning determination by the prior, actually now 4 prior building inspectors in the transition, because this in time. So that was why it was said to be a side yard we're in the side of another building, which is in this case the Beekman building, not the High Street building.
In REA, can you show the nearest parking spot in that area to the nearest home? Just for some relativity there. And
Yeah,
in the yellow, and then where would the nearest home be? Right above?
So it would be, the closest parking spot would be this accessible space. Oh, I'm sorry.
So it would probably be this space in the corner, and then that's your nearest residence right here.
Who's up on the hill. So that's not the
Right.
variance. We're not seeking a variance from that lot line. We're only seeking a variance from the lot line along
From
High Street.
this.
And we've screened that boundary too, and that's a very steep grade. We've even moved, we've worked, you may hear from him tonight, I believe he's here in the public. We've changed locations of our retaining walls, we've adjusted where our draining systems are, we've incorporated additional screening. So we've done a lot to help mitigate or manage that particular property, but the variance we're seeking is just for the side yard and on High Street. And that's what's led to this, additional significant upgrade and second upgrade to the planting plan.
Is the lot line to that house considered a rear yard?
Rear.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, sure.
Ari, did you want to walk through anything on the design? Yeah. Oh, sorry, Rich. Yeah. Was there any other questions before I switch to RA on the project itself for traffic or parking? Okay.
Good evening.
He's going to design the PowerPoint now.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to give you the overview of where the buildings are, we have the one that we're talking about on the corner of Beekman and High Street, and then there's the larger one on Beekman, and it turns the corner to 9D. There's a total of 64 apartments, and I don't have the square footage of retail, but
Just over 13,000.
yeah, it's a little over 13,000 square feet of retail.
Sorry, this is for both buildings or one building?
Both.
Both, yeah. And then just, here's the layout of the larger building, shows you the garage plan on the lowest level, and then the retail and the apartments above. More of that building. And then this is the High Street building. There's no garage over there, just because of the way the grading works and everything. So the first floor retail level is the first floor of the building in that case. And these are images of the building, both buildings. And then we have some renderings, just so you get a sense of what the building design is. There's some evening ones, daytime ones. So we're looking at it from the corner of 9D and Beekman over here.
And there's been a significant change in the project design throughout. A new board member is very focused on lighting as a lighting designer, so there's been a lot of that incorporated that you aren't necessarily seeing here, but that will have certain glazer and other lighting to help sort of articulate area. I had to learn glazing and cove lighting. Yes, yes, I'm getting, because more beyond fenestration now, okay, and porte cocheres. But for this project, as far as the lighting is concerned, there is going to be a lot of that integrated here in the parking area. We've reduced the lighting in the back of the building, so they're on more on the bollards than there are on the higher poles. We've reduced the height of the poles in the back. The back of the building now is being totally sort of updated in response to the planning board's comments. Typically, you have a lot of work in the front, but because of the comments from the public, we've also been working on design for the rear. So this building is going to have front and back design. So you're seeing some of the glazer lighting, which emphasizes the brick, but also maintains dark sky compliance. So there's a balance there of so-called uplighting, right, which would sort of defeat that concept. But the idea is to work it all together. So that's been a significant change and upgrade to the project too. So again, it gives that really that corner focal point as you're coming into Beacon. That was a big push by the planning board to really emphasize you know, and make that a true beacon.
Do you have any views of the High Street onto the lot to see the screening that we're talking about?
We did. Yeah. Oh, there you go.
I mean, you get a glimpse of it here, but we don't have that exact view that you may be thinking of. But, I mean, you know, so basically what's happening is the buildings are providing a lot of the screening from the streets, but where we don't have buildings or where there's the gap between the buildings, then the landscaping is filled in, and then the lighting is intended to work along with that as well.
So which angle is that? Sorry, which angle is that from?
That's from the back. So you're seeing the High Street building on your right.
Yep.
And, you know, High Street is just off the image there.
And so is the idea that that image is showing shorter trees than there will be? Now
We were asked to show, it gets tricky with the rendering. We were asked to show images of the rear of the building.
I see. So this is really more for the building?
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
If you can explain that to the planning board, I'd appreciate that. But no, that's really for the building view. But essentially, you know, we're screening wherever there's not building.
Context there at the corner of Beekman Street, for example, right now in 9D, there's a telephone pole there. The rendering to show the building and the actual corner, you know, entrance and to give you the whole sense of the building doesn't show the telephone pole, but that would otherwise obstruct what is behind. So
Yeah,
that's why you're seeing it. But there is a telephone pole right there on the corner.
There's the telephone pole.
There you go. So we added that in. But that, yes, it's been a lot of work to help really give full context to everything you're going to see day and night, front and back, side and front, up and down. And the SHPO, of course, also reviewed this in the context of historic preservation and had no impact to the High Street corridor, which is not listed but eligible for listing. So a lot of that went into this as well throughout the process. And there you're seeing City Hall coming around the bend. And again, a lot of this, the brick cues that Ari can speak to a lot of the recent development. You have the views right across the street, well, down towards Beekman. You have, of course, City Hall and a number of the new firehouse and everything in that corridor.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant prior to opening it up to the public?
I don't have any.
No.
All right. We'll now open the public, we'll welcome the public up to address any comments they may have about agenda item number 1. Sure, if you could just state your name and address for the record.
Robert Fiorito. I live at 16 High Street, which borders about 177 feet of this property.
Is that the closest? Are you you're the closest?
I'm the house point, which I want to bring up. Aria, can you bring up that overview that shows the parking lot you were talking about with the screening and stuff?
Yeah. He's expensive by the hour. All right.
Oh, I know.
Can you blow that up so it's that, blow it up more? Okay, good. And slide, right, okay. That house there is 16.
That's you.
Yes,
Yep.
that's 16 High Street, okay? And all this talk has been about from the actual High Street, 40 set foot back. But there's never been any discussion about this parking lot that's being pushed right next to my property line. Even in the drawings, if you pull that, can you enlarge that a little bit more? So, bring it, slide it down. Okay, right, that's perfect. So there is actually a 25-foot setback for a property line, and what they've done is they push this parking lot up, and you'll see they have a, there's a 25 minimum rear yard setback for 16 High Street. There's a proposed 14 by 35-foot loading space that encroaches on this setback, along with the proposed 12 by 10 trash enclosure on a concrete pad, which also will encroach on the that 25-foot setback. So I don't know what the setback is of parking lot, but you're encroaching on all the other setback lines. Also, where you come to this corner, in the planning board meeting, there's 4 spaces there that they said they were going to need setback approval for. That- I don't know why that wasn't brought up. That was brought up actually in the planning board. We go like this, and it starts cutting up. There's 3 or 4 spaces there which are probably within 8 feet of the property line, my property line. And also in the prior meeting, in the planning board meeting, the planning board meeting really got heated because of what you talked about was putting in the planting for the screening. And they've asked a number of times to actually have an artist rendition of standing in this parking lot and looking at 16 High Street and also looking at regular High Street, which they haven't done because the renditions they showed you are totally do not, and they know does not reflect what's actually there. So I'm bringing this up because I don't, I'm not professional like you, but they are right on me, okay? And also, where they go up and they do that turnaround, my garage is right there, my driveway is right there, that's probably, that turnaround has to be within, what, about 10 feet of my driveway.
So just to summarize, is it your opinion that more variances are needed than are being sought?
What I'm hearing is that there are, on those diagrams, they actually have variances, and it shows it's encroached, but it's not being brought up. It's not being addressed. It's kind of being put under the rug a little bit. So those need to be looked at as well.
So I guess the answer to my question is yes?
Yes.
You think they require more variances than are being sought?
That is correct. Definitely the one up the side, because that came up in the planning board meeting, where I said, you're going to need they put it up there. There's a real 14-foot drop where we have a retaining wall because of the watershed that it's susceptible. If they're going to dig in, they're going to need to put in some type of retaining wall a couple feet up. Those big
So
concrete
Brian,
blocks.
are you involved in this? Do you know if more variances are required than are being sought?
I do not. They're here from a referral from the planning board, not me.
Okay.
And
No?
Yet, I guess.
Speak to it.
Yeah.
I
especially,
usually respond to it I can let the public speak and then I can respond to all the comments, or I can address them as the board sees fit. However you want me to do it.
do you have any more questions for me? Because, local knowledge is local knowledge, which knows a lot more than people coming in. And so,
So I just think, just to clarify, like, our role in the process, right? So we are not making a determination of what variances are or are not needed. That is either going to come from the building inspector or, in theory, in this case, from the planning board, kind of. And then what our role is to determine, based on the legal factors, whether or not we should be granting or not granting the variances. So the question that you're raising is kind of outside our scope, in that it is not, if we are told by the building inspector or the planning board that there are needed variances, we have to look at them, but we have not been told that by the planning board or the building inspector.
Correct.
So we are only able to hear what is in front of us. And so,
right, what I'm trying to do is the art of the sleight of hand, because they want to push something through, and I'm the public who, if you even look at the diagrams, you can see these, just the 25-foot setbacks from the property line, which they're encroaching on that with the loading dock and the trash receptacle, which is being pushed there because of these parking spaces. Now, they said they're going to move this trash bin area. That's fine, but they always say things, but I don't. And none of these things have been updated. These drawings are from original, what they've done, and that came up in the planning board as well, like the number of trees and everything. This is old stuff you're looking at, which is kind of annoying.
So I think it would probably be helpful, Taylor, for you to respond, I think, directly to this, just so it doesn't get kind of buried by any other comments that there may be.
Sure. When the speaker finishes their comments, I'll come up.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me, or?
I have no other.
No. Thank you.
Right, so this application has been reviewed by the city planning and by the building department in connection with the relief that was necessary. We proactively brought this to the attention of the building department and the planning board, as we had hoped that there would be a favorable interpretation that it was not required to get this relief based on the intentionality of what this setback was designed for, which is to locate parking behind the buildings, which it is. It just happens to also be to the side of another building. So it's not an anomaly, it's just that it captured it in a different way. So what I believe the speaker was speaking to may be setbacks of things like retaining walls and other criteria, but what we're before you, as Mr. Haug mentioned, is for a setback for a parking area. Again, an undefined term, but for the parking area. So only that parking area is within that supplemental setback as it relates to the side yard of this property. So those spaces are the only spaces there, not the rear where the previous speaker is behind, which again is set up very much high. There's an existing retaining wall that you can all see today. Where these parking spaces were, presumably when that speaker purchased the property, that was a contractor storage yard with contractor vehicles and equipment, and you probably all drove by it historically and saw what was there, you know, other than the Pop Mart stuff, Mr. English, which, you know, again, different tastes, maybe not mine. But needless to say, we're proposing an improvement to this whole area. The individuals that just spoke, we've added significant amount of landscaping screening, we've reduced the lighting, he complimented that at the last meeting, so I'll let him speak to that differently if he wishes, but we have been addressing his comments throughout the process, because again, it's one property owner related to this, and we hear that, and we've been trying to modify this plan, but this parking area is not going to have any significant impact to that components, only a few spaces. It's significantly landscaped and screened, which is what this same code says. It's looking to have it be screened from the public right-of-ways, not necessarily from the private residences. And again, that private residence is behind this parking area, not to the side of it. But notwithstanding, so the individual just spoke is behind the property, a rear lot line. The variance we're seeking is from the side lot line on High Street, which we're also screening. We're screening both areas, notwithstanding.
That's not going to be screened by his house?
Yes, it's also, so as you can see on the planting plan, that's also heavily screened.
Okay. The thing that I keyed into with the speaker was a loading dock?
Ariel.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I believe that he was talking about the other setbacks that are required on the property. But those are setbacks to building lines. And you know, so this is parking spaces, loading, landscaped areas. So that, I believe that that's what he meant with the setbacks, you know, related to his property.
So when will we see the other setbacks to consider?
They're not, yeah, we're not encroaching on anything there.
Got it.
Yeah.
And if we were, we'd have to seek relief from you.
Got it.
The only question I have in response to one of the comments, are these are the drawings that were submitted are revised April 29th? Are those the most recent drawings?
So we just appear, so the problem with zoning and planning timing is that we meet
a
the
week in
planning
between.
week before you.
Okay.
So we'll be submitting next week again, based on the planning's comments, to add additional, so nothing of the parking area is changing, but for additional intent, so larger trees at installations. So the same planting plan is proposed, only instead of taking some time for them to grow to a more mature height, now we're planting more mature trees on day one.
So the plan that the board is seeing tonight, in the context of this variance, is the final plan.
Well, it's the final plan, but as Mr. Dates represented this evening, those heights, which are in the record.
The trees, yeah.
Tree
but
sizes.
The parking location, the area
Parking is totally the same.
is going to, okay, okay.
So any condition of a conceived.
The heights have no bearing to us, to your point.
Yeah, that's my point. I just wanted to make the record clear that the drawings looked at tonight are, in the context of the variance, which is the distance,
Yeah.
are what they are.
Unchanged.
Yeah, that is what it is, rather.
Correct.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak?
I think he wants to come back.
Oh, sure. Well, sure, sorry.
Can you blow that up, Aria? I want to address your comment blow it up. You see that, that's a loading dock right alongside the property that the parking lot is pushing up. You see where it's kind of shaded?
Justin will speak to that. It's not a
Yeah.
loading dock.
That's what it says. It says a loading dock, which is also right next to a garbage facility, which is apparently going to be moved. But the thing is I'm bringing up, you notice how they're applying for this variance of what they seem they need, but as the board, you also have to look at all the other variances which they are encroaching on, okay? There is a 25-foot setback from the property line, which that loading dock and the trash bin, and also in that corner, which was brought up in the other meeting, and you guys agreed that you needed a setback for those 3 parking spots when you turn
We're
that.
here for that setback right now.
But you never brought it up. You keep talking this. You're not talking the whole picture. That's what I'm trying to get at.
We've, I think I've spoken to the issue. That's not before this board this evening. If there is a determination made ultimately, we'd have to be before your board, but we're before your board simply for a setback related to the parking spaces identified, for 4 spaces. Yeah, 3 and change, but 4 spaces,
Got it,
specifically 8 feet.
got it.
Hi, if you could just state your name and
Hi.
address for the record, please.
I'm Mary Ellen Case. I live at 9 High Street, and I'm within probably 38 feet of the parking. I guess they forget about my house because they never have it on anything. Just want to show you guys, we put this into the planning
You
board
can-
last time. This is a picture.
You can use the table, yeah, sure.
It might also, I don't know if she can plug in to have it on this.
Sure.
I actually don't. I get crazy when I got to plug it in. So this just shows High Street. This is a picture from this sort of city hall looking at High Street. And there are houses, including mine, that are never in any of the renderings. I have such a hard time really understanding the perspective. In fact, we talked with SHPO.
Can you show us on the site plan here?
It's hard for me to know because they
So
never
here-
picture
here-
the house.
Here's High Street,
Yeah, this is us right here.
Well, I don't know for sure.
This is us right here.
across the street, this one
We're right
here.
across from the parking.
Okay, so you are on the plan, got it.
Yeah.
So this
I
one,
don't know if we're on the plan.
this one right here.
And all this is on the rendering you just showed us, all grassy knoll, so where's the parking gonna be?
Isn't that on the television?
On the new renderings, they just showed up, because they just brought them out, and it all had a grassy thing coming down.
Oh, it was like a rendering, it's like
Back
a,
of that building, and it didn't really have too much parking. So you're giving me 2 different visions that I saw on that thing, when he did the renderings in the back
You
of the
need to
building.
speak into the,
I was trying to use that one.
I wanted to.
On the back of the renderings that they showed us originally on that one building, it all had a grassy knoll coming down, and I didn't see any parking lots back there. And then there's a bicycle rack that's gonna be right there also. That's where the parking lot's gonna be.
Do you mind, they're right across the street. Can you just answer his question where the parking is going to be? And just, they're right across the street, so call it due west
Yeah,
of
because
the property line.
everything is sunk down, and there's a bicycle
So he'll
rack that's
answer
supposed to
he'll
be
answer your
there.
question.
And Taylor, before you get into, I want to make sure.
Okay, why don't we finish let's just finish their
Yeah.
comments, and then I'll speak to any specifics that the board has.
And
Each-
the
each
only other
speaker.
thing I would say is appreciate that the board could see it. I want to make sure the applicant also sees it. So Taylor and your team, if you've had a chance.
If I may, this is what was submitted to planning board? This, yes, so we've seen it.
You've seen it?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I came back, we've seen it from the planning board.
Okay.
But if you have other comments, do you want to finish, and then I'll...
Okay. Well, I guess my property line's about 30 feet to the fence, and then they want an 8-foot, they want it to be 8 feet. I think 32 feet's in my opinion, a significant variance, given the fact that it is going to impact High Street. There's no way this development is not going to impact High Street. We talked with SHPO. They were looking at the renderings they were given. There's never been a rendering, or I should say a real description of what it's going to look like from High Street. If you walk to the top of High Street, SHPO thought, oh, well, you're on a slope, no one's going to be impacted. Well, I live right across from it. The house next to me further down is going to be across from the building. That gentleman's a renter. There's renters in there. Maybe that's one reason why he's not here. But the entire neighborhood has really shown up at the planning board meetings. I think they were very dejected after the SERPA, with this whole SHPO thing, because they're telling us that everything's on a slope, we're not going to see anything. So they thought it was like, oh my God, it's over. Well, we got to fight for it, because I think it's really it's like a ship container building on a beautiful street. But getting back to what we're here for, I do feel that it is an undesirable change that's going to be produced to the character of the neighborhood. And I feel like it's a detriment to our nearby properties. I feel that it's a substantial variance that's being requested. I'm going to be literally hearing doors shut, lights, everything. I'm 38. If the variance goes through, I'm 38 feet. I have a beautiful front porch. I paid an arm and a leg to redo. I don't think I'm going to even want to sit on it. And I just think it has a really adverse effect. I mean, I don't know how else to say it on the physical, environmental conditions of the neighborhood. And, in terms of these drawings, I was like, oh God, how can they get these new drawings? Because we really had a pretty contentious, not really contentious, but just an interesting planning board meeting last time. And they even asked to see the original trees. We have a lot of beautiful original trees that are there right now. And they asked to see that they're included. So I know that that's being worked on, but it's certainly not available today. So I just don't really see, with the whole slope and everything, that we're not going to be screened. I just don't feel we're going to be adequately screened. I also don't feel that the trees, when are they going to grow to that maturity? That was also asked at the planning board meeting. It's going to take 10, 20 years to get to a certain height. I don't know. I also don't understand the commercial aspect of this development. Like, what types of stores? Are we sure they're going to close at 6? Is there going to be a restaurant? Like, how do we know this parking is going to work? Because what's going to happen is High Street's going to be loaded with parking.
The thing that a lot of the things that you're saying are not in our purview. A lot of the things that you're
Okay.
talking about.
All right,
like
so
the
I guess I'll just
setbacks
stick
and
to the
where
variance.
buil-
You're right.
Like today, all we're deciding
Okay,
is on
understood.
these.
It's tough being
So
from,
everything is with the planning board. We're not the lead agency. We are just deciding whether these four, how many? are
yeah,
there?
parking spots, right,
Four
okay.
spaces,
Okay.
can we give them
Sure,
a variance for just that?
right.
It has nothing to do with anything else. They're telling us about the screening, but we have nothing to do with it.
Well,
We have
Well, with
the
the
screening,
parking,
mitigates,
Yes, but I mean.
right.
mitigates the parking, but
where
I
the
also,
Screening is and stuff like that, we don't, it
Okay.
doesn't need a variance for.
okay. So I guess for the variance portion, I just feel it's a very large variance. I feel like it's going to have an undesirable impact on our neighborhood. I'm talking about, myself being 38 feet, potentially if the variance goes through. I mean, I guess isolating it down to that's what I feel. I guess when they were saying they figured out the parking with the commercial, I won't get into it, but I just don't know what kind of commercials there's going to be. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So part of, as you mentioned, Judith, we are here just for the setback relief. But again, the planting plan and landscaping plan has been designed to factor not just for the lower folks walking along the street, but as we mentioned, across the street, right? So if you're in an upper floor of a property across the street, as the trees continue to grow as well, they're already going to be 8 to 10 to 12 feet in height on installation day. So you're already creating that screening on day one, but again, it's going to continue its growth throughout and will have to be maintained and managed by the applicant throughout. That would be a condition of the planning board, but as Mr. Howe certainly notified, what we've identified as the heights and the planting plan can be conditioned on your approval as well. So it can be duplicated or enhanced or even furthered by the planning board, but at a minimum, that relief could include those conditions. And we are pro-offering that, and we've enlarged and increased the size of those plantings twice throughout the review process, again, to try and be responsive to those particular comments. But tonight, again, we are only here for that setback relief. But that would be, again, the whole length. They are across the street. Why we had that corner up on the screen was just to give you context, at least at the bend of the street where your residence is across the street from the lower end of High Street and Beekman in relation to this property, sort of as a diagonal towards the parking area.
So to summarize, 8-foot relief where 40-foot is required
Correct.
for 4 spots.
For four, right, and that's because of the bump out. It's,
Got it.
it's 16 feet if you were just talking parking
Got it.
spaces, but 8 for the.
Let's just keep it simple. Got it.
And then just to speak to the 38 feet that the previous speaker was talking about. So we have 40 feet from
Yeah, Justin.
the thick line, which is the property line, and then do you know how many feet there are from the edge of the parking area to the street, or to the other side of the street?
I do have the other side of the street. So,
Sure.
In that vicinity, as we mentioned before, if you start from where the curb line is for that bump out, right, we're 8 feet to our property line, right? Then from the property line to the curb line that's adjacent to the project site, that's another 13 feet.
So
Okay.
8 plus 13 to get to the beginning of the road on
The curb
on
line
on
of
your
the.
side.
Yes.
Yep.
Right, then the roadway itself is another 24 feet. So just to the western curb line of High Street, that's 45 feet from the bump out for the portion of the parking area.
Got it.
Okay. If I could, similar dimensions were raised from the gentleman from 16 High Street. So the one space that's on the north side that gets cut off by the variant, that is part of the variance request, that corner of the space is 19 feet to our property line, not the 10 or 8 that were mentioned by the resident. That
Sorry,
same
could you just repeat that one more time?
Yeah, 19 feet from that corner to the property line.
To the rear property.
Rear property line, yes.
That's right. Okay.
And then the corner of the house, which I believe he said is the garage, that side, from that same corner of the parking stall to that is 37 feet. So it's much more substantial than what was
said?
mentioned. Yeah.
I believe 8 and 25 were said, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I believe.
Okay. Anyone else from the public wish to speak on this application? If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Sure. James Ellinger, I'm on West Church Street. I oppose granting the variance for a few different reasons. One, the historic overlay clearly shows the preservation of the length of High Street. When you look at that overlay, it goes all the way to the end of the street. So that, like, just in the grand scheme of what the street set up as and the overlay that was created for that street, it goes all the way to the bottom, which this goes over. I'm curious if granting, a variance in this area creates a precedence for other properties that are adjoining the historic overlay. I mean, that's more a legal question. Second, the proposed screening seems woefully inadequate as there's simply not enough space. The narrow nature of the proposal would dictate that the landscaping would be so crunched. I mean, we're talking about, distances from 40 to 8. There's a lot more landscaping that could go into that space, blocking everything from High Street if you're allowed that 40 feet. 8 is simply not that much, and as those trees and whatever grows, larger, it's still condensed, and as you mentioned, it's really impeding that sidewalk. Third, it definitely changes the character of that street. Calling it an improvement to put a 4-story building on that corner where there's really nothing now is a matter of opinion. From the empty, area that we've had before for a long time, it's really not been an imposition on anyone in that area. Also, just to add, from a practical standpoint, we can go through these diagrams and point at overlays and things like that. As I live a block away from that, we see tons of parking issues. Constantly, people that want to go down to the train park on streets. They park longer than the 4-hour requirements. They adjusted the timing of these traffic lights. If many of you have seen the lines going from that on Beekman all the way down, go past the view now. Many cycles of traffic are going through there. This is going to impact that area. And once people start parking on High Street, to go to whatever shops are there. Again, it's just going to be more calamitous, in that area. It seems odd, 64 units plus commercial, and they say that 91 spaces is enough. That math doesn't sound right. It sounds very odd to me, especially when we have loads of public parking around and we're seeing people parking on streets for days over weekends, where they're not supposed to be parking. So again, there is a petitioner out right now. Over 350 people have signed it to get this whole project redesigned. This is just one aspect. I don't think the variance should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? All right. Taylor, do you have any response to the last comment?
I don't have any other comments at this time.
And Jordan, just for the record, there was also the email comment.
Yes.
From Scott Lerman, residing at 40 North Street, that was received earlier today, June 17th, around 11:07 a.m. Just want to confirm that all the board members received that and had the opportunity to review that.
Yes. All right. And just for the benefit of the public, I think it's, again, important to re-emphasize what our role is on this project. It is simply or not simply to determine whether or not these 4 spots should be permitted or not, essentially, based on the factors. So in theory, right, if we denied them, they could, in theory, go back to the planning board and attempt to reduce their parking requirement, or come back to us and ask us to reduce their parking requirement. And then the question would be, if that is granted, then, they're back to that 40-foot setback, and a lot of the issues that are raised today still exist, which is outside of our purview. Just for to try to explain our role in the process. With that being said, any comments or questions from the board to the applicant?
I have no further questions.
I just want to know what happens if we deny this. You're saying they'd go back to the planning board and...
Right, so they are, the planning board has made a determination, and anyone correct me if I'm wrong, right? So the planning board has made a determination that there needs to be 91 parking spots on this site, of which 4 are in the setback, the 40-foot setback. So in theory, alternative relief could be a reduction of the 91 to another number. If you get to a number where you don't require parking in the setback, well, you don't need a variance for parking in the setback. You might need the planning board to adjust the number down, which they may not do. So you may end up back to us asking for a variance to reduce the number of parking spots.
Okay, so say if we don't grant it and we don't grant the lower number of parking spaces, what happens?
Well,
at that point, so
Because
and Taylor, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. There's basically 4 possibilities, right? There's the project as proposed. There's going back to the planning board and saying, hey, planning board, can we reduce it from 91 to 88?
Which we tried, and they were not receptive to originally.
These are theoretical possibilities. What the practical result is, Taylor knows better. And then if they say, okay, it's still 91, it would be a variance to reduce to 88.
That's 3, right? So 2 is the planning board reduces to 88. 3 is we reduce it in theory.
Yes.
Right.
And 4, a theoretical possibility, which I'm sure the planning board has dug into this, and again, Taylor, feel free to jump in, is reorganizing this location, this area. Because one of the things that we keep talking about, and the board, you guys keep repeating it, which is good. You understand the role here. It's the setback for this parking area, which de facto means the 3 to 4 spaces. But even if it was 88, for example, depending on how the project is designed, they might still need this variance because of that bump out or a drive aisle there, or whatever the case may be. So, for the public's benefit and for the board's benefit, it's not so much, okay, well, what happens with these 4 spots? It's what happens with this whole area, because the variance right now is for the area that includes the 4 spots.
And I think an important piece of this section of the code, as we mentioned, it talks about being behind the building. We are. But then it mentions that if you're to the side, that you need to landscape it, and we've done that. Any reduction or change in that area could certainly provide potentially more, or to council's point, we may still need to put that parking in the location, but you wouldn't create a even more robust landscaping plan. The intent of this design and what's been prepared and what the planning board has asked us to increase, at least the size, is it will screen this location, period. It's now just going to do it more from day one than it had out of the gate. So this has been designed to reflect that, and as has been mentioned tonight, the SHPO, so State Historic Preservation Office, looked at our proximity to the High Street corridor and said this project, parking, building, otherwise, has no impact on the community character, and has actually required this applicant to prepare, even during the construction phase, a full program of how hours of operation, maintaining like all sorts of other criteria to ensure there are no impacts, even during construction, to any of these residences, let alone, sorry, go ahead, Jude.
What agency said this project is not going to?
It's called a no impact letter, and State Historic they call it the SHPO, but it's OPHRP, the Office of Parks, Historic Preservation and I'm sure I'm butchering it, but it's State Historic Preservation Office.
So they've deemed it that these 2 big buildings with all of these apartments and all of this commercial is not a detriment.
And so too did the planning board through their negative declaration. In specifically stating in their negative declaration, the type 1 action that was reviewed, the planning board identified that this project would not have any parking, traffic, or otherwise have any potentially significant adverse environmental impacts, community character or otherwise. So those are all accounted for in our negative declaration. That considers aesthetics, that considers, consistency with the comprehensive plan, all of those criteria. And in fact, a big piece of this, and one of the factors you look at in this analysis, the 5 factors plus, I guess I call it, is whether this is the minimum relief necessary. The building was moved up by buying land from the state to make that achievable, so that it moved it up to Beekman, to be able to accommodate, those additional changes and again, move it away from the residences as a part of this application.
Well, the plan of the building was moved up, the building wasn't moved, so it's just a plan.
What changes will be reflected in your next submission that will be relevant to the application in front of us?
I'll have Justin speak very specifically to the heights, because I think that's the primary driver. REA is doing some other articulation to the building, but what's before you as far as the parking, I'll have, and that area in general.
So what we're looking at is really in terms of the landscaping. As I mentioned before, we've been asked to look at the initial installation size and increasing those. Some of those species that would be increasing are part of the buffer or the screening that are associated with the variance request that we have. That's also associated with the screening that goes along the northern boundary of our property for the benefit of the High Street parcels that we are adjacent to. So it will be, as I mentioned, it will apply to these plantings that are part of the variance request. We've already made lighting modifications, as Mr. Palmer mentioned, reducing the overall height of pole-mounted light fixtures from 20 to 15 feet, using bollard lights or 4 foot or so to accent some of the walkways, removed some building-mounted lighting fixtures in place for the use of bollards. So we've already made some modifications in coordination with the planning board from those aspects, and we continue to evolve that a little more based on the comments
So
just
one can
received.
say that the additional height on the trees, the vegetation, the lowering of the lights mitigate the negative impact to the neighborhood. I think is where you're going, right?
Correct. Those were modifications that we've made along
Yeah.
the way for that. The layout of the parking as it stands on the plans that you see, that is not
Changing.
one of our proposed changes, correct? And there is not a loading dock that is in that area. It's a surface loading space. So it's not, a traditional dock is something that's up against the building or at the building. Yeah, this is a loading space.
So it's a parking space.
It's a parking space, yeah. It's at same elevation, same paved area
So if
as,
there's a deli there, it's a parking space for the drop
it
off
would
the
be,
soda.
your Amazon truck comes in, he's able to park there and not, block parking spaces from others to get in and out of.
So it's just a reserved, basically open space for deliveries.
Correct. That's correct.
And not permanent, but.
Non-passenger vehicle.
Sure, yeah, got it, okay.
vehicles, yeah. So that's not within this setback that we're speaking of. That's outside of that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We have another member of the public that wishes to speak? Sure, yeah. if you just hold it up till you get to the mic.
No, I just wanted, my understanding, if I understood it correctly after the planning board meeting, was that the new landscape plan also had included the existing planting. So I don't know if that's being done, but we haven't seen it. And then, that whole SHPO thing, we did have 2 meetings as the residents, and we just felt that they were completely just taking the renderings that were to their advantage, and their fact that they could say that there's no impact, because no one's going to see it. Nobody on High Street's going to see it, because we're on a slope, just sort of proves that there were busy people in an office in Albany. They were very lovely, but, it was just almost really sort of crazy. So we tried that. I know this isn't that, but I just wanted to bring up the landscaping because I thought that was really important to see, because we've never really seen anything from the High Street view. And that's really difficult. It's difficult to even make comments and feel like you're making an accurate comment.
Well, what do you see now?
What do I see now? I see an empty lot. And prior to that, the contractor was very clean. It was never, now I know that keeps bringing up it was a contractor's yard, but it was very well-maintained. It wasn't noisy. He just stored there. It wasn't like things were going on. So it was never a problem. I've bought the house in 2007, so the last couple of years it's been vacant. So we see the whole, I see the vacant lot right now.
And you don't think the screening will screen it?
It depends. I mean, if they put in trees that are like 30 feet high or something, but the reality is, after the first planning board meeting, we all walked to the top of High Street. We certainly are going to see these 57-foot buildings. There's just no way. The house down from me is going to be literally right across from the building. And I still can't tell exactly where the building's going to end compared to my house. Because I've never seen it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Edwin Chong, 20 High Street. So just a couple short comments, hopefully. Just one, appreciate applicants' actually efforts to kind of make adjustments in response to what the public's been saying at the planning board meeting. I guess with regards to the variance for the parking spots, I guess my only concern is just if they are going to be in the setback, right, and kind of encroaching on the setback, my only concern would be how that affects the proposed buffer and screening between the development and the residences on High Street, right? Because from what we've seen so far from the renderings, it's just been one, like you saw, there was like just the open lawn and then the back of the buildings, and we didn't really see what the actual screening is going to look like at that point. And now, if there's going to be parking spots taking up some part of that back area, which could affect how much room there is available for screening and planting of trees, and I think that would be a concern. And I think one thing that we've always been kind of hoping to see is just like, what will the new screening look like? Originally, some tree plantings were proposed. They were very short. I think applicant came back and said, like, okay, we're going to plant more mature trees. But it still would really help to see, like, what does the height of those trees look like in terms in this proposed space, right? And the second thing, just to reiterate what Mary Ellen said, is the SHPO's determination of no impact is really based on what the applicant submitted to SHPO and in just conversations like she mentioned with them. they had really kind of no understanding of what is the view from High Street, right? If you look out from her porch, really, it's a very different effect from them looking at the buildings from Beekman, right, or from 9D. So again, appreciate the adjustments that the applicants made, but it would just really help to see what does the new rendering look like with the new plans, and how does the addition of those 4 spots affect, what the screening is, capable of doing at that point. Thank you.
I'll just mention, but just for the benefit of the board to look at what we're talking about, if you look at page 3 of Exhibit A, we show you sort of the evolution, probably as Mary Ellen has seen since 2007, from 2012, 2017, and 2018, and you'll see what really you're looking at from the street view from existing. Of course, it is now vacant, to the extent that's not including the 3-story building, but you'll see a context of what is that view, or was that view, historically, and then also page 5 kind of shows the corner with some of the existing trees along the DOT's right-of-way and the property itself. So those kind of give you a sense of what we're talking about from existing planting plans, but Justin's now going to speak to the actual, to the specifics of what's going to stay, what's going to be emphasized.
I think I just wanted to clarify that what is on the plans right now is those spaces that we're describing to this board and looking for the variance for, as is the proposed landscaping or buffering. What's on the plans and what was provided to this board is really not changing, other than what we talked about with taller initial planting size. So it sounds, some of the public, I think, thinks that this next plan is going to change this whole area, but there's just those planting aspects that we're going to modify.
Thank you. So, right, from my perspective, I think it would be somewhat helpful to see the change, right? So we don't have a few things. I think we don't have up there, that is what will be submitted to us, or that is what is submitted to us?
What is submitted to you.
And so
the only thing that's changing is the height. Nothing else is changing on this plan. There are no renderings being prepared that would, we don't show renderings with treescape. That's not part of, because you're looking at renderings for buildings.
Yep.
The landscaping plan, there's a landscape architect on the planning board, there's a planner, they go through and they look at these in the context of how they'll grow, how they'll be maintained, how they intersperse with each other, and layout. So there isn't a rendering that would show this separately. The renderings that we have are to show the building, because that's the context that you're looking at from High Street and otherwise. The landscaping would, of course, impede that. You would just be seeing trees in that rendering with little breaks of the building, or to the extent the parking areas or otherwise, by showing that. So it would be, you would effectively be thwarting the purpose of the rendering, which is to show the building, not its interrelationship with the landscaping plan. But the landscape design is to accommodate all of that and to provide species and diversity and so year-round screening, and not just, for example, if you just had evergreens, if you had just deciduous trees, and they were, to lose those leaves in the wintertime. This is to create a year-round buffer beyond just something like fencing or otherwise. So this will create that additional buffer that's not there presently on top of what trees are there under existing conditions. So thank you, RA, but that's not very helpful in the context of showing a building when you see that.
Sure.
But that's the point of it, right? It does get there, but this design is to do that. It's to provide something that's not presently there, as our visuals that we provided from Street View show you the real conditions of what someone would see today.
Taylor, the rendering that REA had up before in like the dark behind the building in the parking lot, REA, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that one. Is that I mean, that shows the landscaping, right? I mean, that's quasi what the board is looking at, right? I mean, that's the parking area with the landscaping behind that building.
Switch, but yes. It's behind, but that's, the other building, that's the Beekman building.
Yeah, okay.
The far building was the High Street, and that.
All the way down.
Correct, all the way down is the High Street building.
Okay.
Yeah, but that image just sort of gives you a flavor of the idea, we're on a slope and it's going to be heavily treed over there with evergreen and a mix of other kind of plantings.
But the other side of those trees is not High Street, right?
That is, so the tree if you were to drive straight down the driveway in this picture, the tree at the very end, behind that tree would be High Street.
That's a view, if you're standing behind the Beekman building, that is where this view is from. If you go all the way down that is the parking area.
Right, that's been
that
questioned for
we
the
are
variance.
talking about tonight.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else from anybody?
Nope.
All right. So then I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing on agenda item number 1.
So moved.
Motion by Judy, can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Montos, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. And Taylor, would you like us to go through this evening, or would you like to wait for Stowe to be here?
I'd please ask the board to consider proceeding on the review of the 5 factors and the relief.
All right, so we will go through our test. All right, so this is a variance request, so this is a 32-foot variance request from the required 40 feet to make the setback. All right. Oop, it's all right, Judy.
Sorry about that.
So we're going to go through the factors. Okay, so as to whether an undesirable change will be reduced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance.
Yeah, I don't think so, looking at the grand scheme of things with what's in scope for this board and solely what's in scope for this board. I don't think granting 4 spots relief out of a total of 91 would do anything negative to the neighborhood, including the measures that I heard that they've already committed to as far as mitigating various comments that they heard from neighbors.
Though this creates a lot of cognitive dissonance for me, I don't think the 4 parking spots that are ours to consider, and only that, are going to have a detrimental effect on the neighborhood.
You have anything to add, Judy?
Well, the spots that we're talking about, if we're looking at Exhibit B here, Exhibit A, page 6, these parking spaces are going to be where right now its equipment is being parked. Am I wrong?
Previously, correct. That was a contract here.
So, given that's already a parking lot, no, I do not think it will create a detriment.
Yeah, I think you could argue there might be a detriment created by being inside the setback to the degree that it is, but their attempt to mitigate it by the landscaping, again, mitigates a lot of the detriment, in my opinion. All right. As to whether the benefit the applicant seeks can be achieved through another method feasible for the applicant to pursue that does not require the area variance.
They could go back to the planning board and ask them to lower the number of parking spaces.
Right, right. So I think we kind of went through this, right? So
I know.
And just for the record, we did ask we did try and make our case for that, but because we had the ability to provide it on site, we wanted to just sort of account for that here and understanding, as the public mentioned, the interest of having more parking, we wanted to sort of address that in that way. So this provides that benefit as well. So it does provide additional off-street parking.
And even though it's in the setback, it's not a building in the setback, it's a space.
as to this point,
Say it again? say the point again?
Yep, so well, to this point is as to whether the benefit the applicant seeks can be achieved through another method feasible for the applicant to pursue. So we kind of went through that, right? So
Yeah, they were
one would be to go back to the planning board and ask for the parking requirement to be reduced. Another would be to ask us for a different variance to reduce the parking.
Which, yeah, so
right.
I would say no. I'd say they're better off with the parking spaces than without them.
Yeah,
Judy, if you could.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I had that big thing here. I forgot. What did I just say? What was the question?
For the record, she said no.
Jordan is saying how one potential option is going back to the planning board.
Right, and then I think it's better that they have more parking spaces there than go back to the planning board and come back with 88 spaces that we have to give a variance for anyway. I think this is a better variance.
yeah, I think we brainstormed a few different ways of options, but you could always reduce your scope too, which would reduce your scope of required parking spaces. So taking I don't mean to offend anybody, but taking the emotional part out of the entire project, putting that to the side, and just staying within our scope review, I think this is the minimum required.
All right. As to whether the requested variance is substantial.
And I'll just add on, re-echoing comments I was just saying, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think this is substantial. Mathematically, it's not substantial. I don't see it substantial from impact or any of that. So I don't think it's substantial in the grand scheme and within our scope. I have to keep emphasizing that because I'm not sure everyone understands that.
Yeah, what's within our purview, I agree with you.
I do too.
Yeah, right. Again, as to the four spaces in the setback, I do not think that request is substantial. As to whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
I say no.
I say no. I'd rather have that than a contractor's parking lot.
No, it's better than people parking on the street.
Right, and I think that's the key.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I also want to state for the record that there was a secret negative declaration that was issued that talks to the environmental conditions.
Of non-impact.
Correct.
Yeah, no, that,
What he said.
Yep.
As to what
for the record.
Thanks, George. As to whether the alleged difficulty is self-created.
Yes.
yes.
Yes, Taylor personally created this.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Yes. All right. And then as to whether we find that the requested variance is or is not the minimum variance necessary and adequate to preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community.
Yes.
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 Sure. All right. If we were to grant this, well, let's talk about that. Do we have any additional conditions other than the normal conditions that we want to impose?
Well, I mean, to me, obviously, it's the normal conditions, but everything we heard that you've already committed to in front of the planning board. So not backing out of any of those, right? Because all the measures you've articulated tonight are, in my point of view, mitigation on the negative feedback that you heard from the public. So as long as you stick to your word, those are the conditions that I would want to see.
And let me just clarify that. Are what you presented us tonight agreed to conditions with the planning board?
So the planning board's still in public hearing, so they still have a site plan and subdivision public hearing open, so they could require even more than what we're offering. So we're offering, right, I mean, we've already increased it before. This is the second time we've increased the landscaping, but it was to respond to a specific comment. So yes, we're pro-offering the heights that we said tonight, which are in addition to what we showed. So landscaping will remain the same planting plan, only they will be more robust
So
as
to be
described.
explicit then in our minutes, I would say the conditions of the height of the vegetation that we heard tonight,
Or greater,
Or
should the
greater.
planning
or greater.
board, should the
have
planning board
minimum
then
water-
require, right?
Yeah, or greater.
Yep.
All right, so then the conditions would be, of course, all fees have to be paid up front, and then the normal timing requirements, which are, George, if you could do that for me, please.
Yep, obtain a building permit within 6 months from the date of obtaining the final land use approval.
We fixed that one.
Yep, we had that issue last year, whenever it was. Commence construction within 6 months following the date of the issuance of the building permit, and complete construction and obtain the certificate of occupancy within 24 months after the date of issuance of said building permit.
I assume you'll be in front of us for extensions, and then if we add the additional requirement of at least the amount of screening you discussed and presented this evening, those would be agreeable?
Yes.
To the applicant?
Screening and lower lighting. Those were the two things that I heard.
Yeah, the lower lighting was, the planning board already,
Yeah.
yeah, that hasn't changed since, but yes, either way, yes.
Or more as
Reduced
required by
height
the
of
planning board?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and the bollards.
All right, very good. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve? Motion to approve the variance of the 4 requested spots seeking the 32-foot relief based on all the conditions we just documented.
Great. Motion,
Second.
second by Judy, and I'll call the roll. Elaine?
Yes.
Montos?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time tonight.
All right. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing on agenda item number 2?
So moved.
Motion by Judy, can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Elaine, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can have whatever you want.
Hello.
Easy, I hope. Hi. Hi.
Your audience is leaving.
I didn't think they'd want me. I'm not a bad target. So I don't know if you need me to present what we're asking for, but there's 2 sign variance applications here. One is for our front windows. We have 2 entrances on Main Street, one of which is this front one you're seeing in Exhibit A.
I'm sorry, did you state your name and
Oh, sorry.
address and all?
Sarah Ordaz. I'm at Savage Wonder. We're at 139 Main Street. Andy, here. So these full window signs, the variance is to have text that's over 30% of the window, because this is for the entrance of the part we're not using yet. It's under construction. It's had black bags over it for a year, so we just want to be able to put our logo on it. We're using the 141 entrance right next door.
This is the former church. This is the former church, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Church,
got it.
bank, whatever. you wanna
Yep,
call
sure.
it.
And this entrance is set back in off the street, correct?
Correct. You can, well, I guess this is above the steps, but yes.
Do you intend them to be permanent?
Well, this, it'll just be, we can't start construction until January 2026 at soonest, and then it'll take another 6 to 8 months to have that space ready to open probably. So it would be a year and a half or so.
All right, so let's do this, just for the benefit of the board and for the public. George, can you just explain the need of these variances?
Yeah, so it's, as the applicant said, it's 2 variances. It's actually, I view it as 4 variances for 2 different signs. There's what we'll call sign A, there's what we'll call sign B, and there's what we'll call sign C. Sign B, and we say sign A, sign B, sign C. I think it's Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C in the packet before the board. Sign B has no issues, according to the building inspector's denial letter. Sign A, there is a limitation where the amount of signage, maximum amount of signage covering glass, the glass area is 30%, and here the proposal is 100%. So conceptually, you could have basically a third of the glass covered in a sign. Here, it's the entire glass, and there's 2 windows. There's 2 glasses being covered here, so it's 100% of each window. That's
And just for reference, these are the outer windows or the inner windows?
They're going to be on the inside facing out.
there you go.
Yes.
It's the front ones.
No, I understand that. So so I'm looking at like the front of the building. There are 2 windows like on like the exterior, and then there's 2 windows near the door.
Just the door side lights.
In the door.
No, they're talking about in the door for
Yeah.
A.
Yep, okay, so we're talking about in the door?
Here.
Yep.
Yeah, there's two, the two
And
occupy.
then on the sides of the door.
Yeah,
But-
okay,
And the Savage Wonders on the,
And over the top, the transom.
and over the.
got it.
So all of those in Exhibit A, covering the entirety of the glass.
And what is permitted? Sorry, George.
30%. 30% of each glass area. So a third of each window. And here it's 100%. It's the entirety of each window.
I just had a question. Above this is a huge arch window.
In either.
That's not going to be covered with
No.
anything?
No,
Okay.
we want natural light in there, but we don't want it visible from the street because it's going to be messy.
And George, the code is 30% of each window?
The code as written states that, and I will pull it up right here. Just bear with me.
It's glass area is what the code says, but there's no definition of glass area in the code.
So it could be each individual pane of glass, or it could be the total glass. Well, we don't.
Correct.
We
Right.
had
Yeah.
conversations of going for an
Yeah.
interpretation instead, where the whole glass archway would count as our glass
Total
storefront.
glass
Because that would reduce, right, in theory, yeah, okay.
So that was the,
Yeah, so
No.
if you think of it that way, it's not even 30.
But as Brian's denial letter, he essentially determined that it is 100% because it's the entirety
Sure.
of each glass pane. So there's no math, it's 100%. And it's, you don't have to calculate the total of those windows.
Sorry for my ignorance here.
It's all good. This is a confusing one.
So what I heard was there are sign A, sign B, sign C, 3 signs. Then I heard you say, but you think there are 4 variances.
Because sign C has multiple variances.
So sign A is what? The glass on the doors?
Sign
100%?
A, so again, in the denial letter, it's called sign A, and Brian could speak better to this, but sign A is the doors and the windows next to it, right?
Yes, correct.
So it's the group of those signs called sign A.
So Savage, those octopuses or whatever they are with a top hat, and Wonder.
yes.
And Wonder.
That's sign A.
Yeah. Exhibit A, in the package before you, it's Exhibit A1, Exhibit A2, Exhibit A3.
And then that's sign A. What is sign B? Where is that?
So that was already approved with the Architectural Review Board last week.
So that doesn't
That has
need
no
a variance.
variance, that was fine.
So what is sign C?
Sign C is the octopus with glasses on the back of the, is it the back of the building?
Yeah, so this is because
It's
we
on the
have a
side of the building.
back
Side.
entrance, right behind it, which you can see in that picture, and we have nothing able to
So it's on
direct people to that
It's on the
door.
rear side.
Yeah,
It is on the west side of the building,
Got it.
facing the
Facing
parking
South
lot.
Got it.
And this is required because,
it's a second wall sign.
Yeah, so there's a couple, when I say there's 3 variances for this, the one is that a maximum of 1 sign affixed to the outer wall of a structure is permitted, so this would be a second. So the variance is to allow a second sign.
Because the Savage and Wonder is the
No,
first.
because the.
No,
hanging
th-
banner-
yeah, this is on now, I don't know where the first sign is, you could
So
find
sign B was approved by the planning board at the last meeting. It is a projecting sign that hangs off
Oh,
an arm on the,
perpendicular sign
correct.
wall.
Correct.
And
Is that
that's on
2
the front
sides?
of the building already. So that would be their first sign, which the planning
Got
board
it,
approved.
got it.
Okay.
It's in here because it was submitted in their package, and we
Right.
thought it would be good to show you their first sign when they're asking for a second.
right,
That's
okay.
why it was left in there.
So, all right, so we have a sign that's going to be hung essentially over Main Street, and then sign C, which needs the variance, is in the rear?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay,
it's our back.
Well, it's important, it's on the side.
And it's on the wall.
but towards the rear, side
It
rear.
has arrows pointing.
Well, there's a
to it.
rear of this building, and then there's a side of the building.
Yeah. So that's the back door.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
But
No,
on
that's the
wall.
sidewall.
No, that's
So
the
if
back door, though.
Oh, that's the
Yeah,
back door.
it's the back door that you see.
Yeah.
'Cause there's
If you were
a-
walking down Main Street, you would not see
No.
the sign, correct?
This
There's
is
a
if,
building
yeah,
in the way.
if you're walking from Main Street to the street behind is
If you're
where
walking from Main Street to Commerce on South Street, that's where you'll see it. It's in the parking lot behind Bank Square.
So,
But it doesn't abut or face commerce, and the code is clear to that aspect. That's one of the differences.
Here.
Because this property does abut Commerce, but not, I'm not sure of the other side road that cuts off there, where the firehouse is, whatever that road is.
South Street.
South Street.
So I'm going to ask one more time. That sign's on the wall.
This is on the wall.
Yeah.
C is on the wall.
And so with sign C, it's the number, right? So sign B is the first sign affixed to the outer wall of the structure. And therefore, sign C would be the second. One is permitted, so you need a variance to allow two.
Okay.
And then the size?
Yeah.
And then it's the size, correct. So one is the square footage, maximum aggregate area of each sign could be 53 square feet. It's a calculation based on the linear frontage. And the proposed aggregate area of the sign is 96 square feet. So it is a 43 square foot variance. And then it's the height. The maximum height of each sign is 2 feet, and this sign is proposed to be 12 feet. So it is a 10-foot variance. So to recap, high scope, it's for sign A on the front, it's the covering of the glass. It's 100% of the glass. For sign C on the side of the building, toward the rear of the building, it's the number, allowing a second. If you allow a second, it's also the square footage and the height.
How often do you anticipate using the rear entrance?
We'd like to use it regularly. We've built out the...
I'm not entirely sure what's going in there. So what is that rear
like a
entrance
gallery.
going to
So
lead into?
there's a gallery, a theater, and a wine bar. And right now, we only have the downstairs open, so there's two entrances to the downstairs, one from Main Street that's not the 139 main entrance, it's 141. And then this one from the back is sort of our larger, it's meant to be ADA someday, but we have a thing on the door, so it can't be yet. But we'd like to get more use out of it, and we wanted a sign in this parking lot because nobody can see that we're there at this entrance, and it doesn't really face anything else.
Right. Can you make these signs on the glass any smaller?
So we have signs that right now, Brian said we could have the text that's 30% and just a color for the rest of the sign. So we have that, but we'd like to be able to announce our name a little bigger from the street, since, as you said, this is set back a little, and you can't really see Savage written tiny. The Savage Wonder. So that was the only reason. And since we're not using it.
And I think you answered it before, but I was also curious when I was looking at the application materials. Sign A, the Savage Wonder, and on the doors there, are those are meant to be there for the long term? It's not like there's something going on inside that you're, like construction or something going on that you have it up now and you'll take it down later? Or is this a temporary?
I mean, it's at least a year and a half.
Okay, okay.
Or, yeah, over a year.
Okay.
Hopefully not a whole year and a half, but a long stretch.
But do you think at some point they will come down and you'll have the glass there and the side lights?
I don't know what the design is going to be when we do construct it.
It might be a good place to advertise what's going on inside.
Correct, yes. We might do show posters. I don't know. I mean, it's on Main Street, so we'd have to do the architectural review board for every sign change out we do. So I think we'd like to keep that to minimum.
Yeah.
So are the designs of the sign approved already, or do they need the variance and then they go?
Correct.
So they do not require approval because they do not require a permit, the planning board. So they do not require a permit per the code. The planning board deemed that they do not require approval because they did not require a permit. But the code says you cannot cover more than 30% of your window regardless, so that's why they're here for the variance. If that makes sense.
It's a museum type thing.
This is not a setback variance.
That's what
This is very
we're
art
imagining the
installation,
Met,
very
like,
museum.
big banners down the Met.
This is, normal.
30%, I need to understand 30% of the window. Is it
I'm
the
looking at
aggregate
the
space of all the
scope.
windows 30%, or is it 30% per pane of glass of the window?
So
Because there's a big difference there.
there's a huge difference there. Let me just scroll up. Sorry, let's just- So the code says glass, its reference is glass area, is what the code says, and it does not define glass area. So I was looking at it as in sections. So like, say the Savage window, I would consider glass area. Same with Wonder is a separate glass area. If it's defined by a large enough border to look at it as glass area, that's what I was making the
So if you're looking
determination
at it the
as.
way I think you just articulated, it would be all individual variances. If you look at it 30% per glass, like Savage 30%, Wonder 30%, the Doors 30%, that to me would be 3 variances.
He determines that.
So
Yeah, that's
why
why, I don't disagree, yeah.
So is that what we're considering, 3 variances for Exhibit A, Sign A? Or are we considering 30% for the aggregate of the glass in Sign A?
So that is the way it's phrased right now, and I think one of the other sort of, not messy, but one of the reasons we're even asking that question is because it's 100%, right? If each sign was a different size, we'd be looking at it very clearly as, 4 separate variances, for example.
Yep.
But this is 100% of each thing, which 100 of each is 100 of the total. So if the board sees it fit to be, or if Brian, as the building inspector, sees it fit to be individual variances, it could be looked at on an individual basis like that, but because it's 100%, 100% is the 100%. But if
So we can ask Brian, we can vote on what he says, and then if it wants to be challenged, it can come back as challenging the building inspector interpretation, right?
Yes, essentially, yes. In as much as is it the total glass area of each window? Is it the total glass area of the 4 windows? Is it the total glass area of all the windows, all the glass on the building, ground to top floor, whatever the case is? But right now, Brian has, in his denial letter, by virtue of the denial letter, made that determination.
And you see it as individuals?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if it wasn't an individual, they have a very large glass area above these doors that, if that was then the determination, they would not have required
Yeah.
the variance, because this would have been well under the 30% if it was that entire,
Right, the
large
bay up on
area.
top.
Yes.
I didn't know if you viewed the door as kind of one unit and you were looking at it that way.
No, I was looking at it like as they were individual. I was trying to separate them from the large glass area to not set a precedence where if you have, large amounts of glass, you could cover
Yep.
3 windows out of 10 full, is what I was trying to prevent. And I believe that's the intent of the code, and speaking with previous building inspectors, that's what their intent was also.
So just, I don't mean to insult, but I just want to make sure you're following, right? So where you have Savage, no more than 30%, where you have Wonder, no more than 30%.
Oh, yes, I've been deep in the codes here.
Okay, and then the doors, I guess that's 1 unit.
Mhm.
The 2 doors, that's 1 unit, no more than 30% there.
There's actually a third. If you do the 2 octopus on the door windows, there's a little 64 by 17, that's another window, that's on top of the doors.
But you're not asking for sign there.
No, that's a sign.
No, it's just
there's a
so if you look
transom.
Oh,
at
there's a
ex-
sign up there
That's
too.
a sign in the
Yeah.
picture.
So if you look
Yes.
at Exhibit A3, I
Yeah.
think that,
Window above the door, it's this one.
yeah,
Wow.
To be fully transparent,
yeah.
it is every single.
No pun intended, given that we're talking about
Correct.
covering a
Being
transparent,
transparent.
yeah.
Could you eliminate, what if you took out the windows?
Brian makes the determinations. You're saying if you take out the windows so that there is no glass area to calculate?
Right. Well, like if those were not windows and they were solid structures,
Then I imagine it would be the number of signs on the
Oh, then we
outer,
gotta do the wall sign.
outer
variance
wall of the
anyway.
structure.
because then they would be, okay.
Wall signs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And then that would go to ARB.
because it's
Well, and it would
on,
be a
It's
variance,
historical.
'cause
Yeah.
we have the
There you go.
So they're avoiding that because it's the windows, but the window, okay, all right. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Take it as you find it.
Sure. I was just working through it. All right.
We originally did send them to ARB, and it was the planning board's determination that they didn't need to take an action. I thought that it did, but they did not.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the applicant at this point? Anyone from the public?
Everyone's opposed.
No one left. All right. So I will take a motion to close the public hearing on agenda item number 2.
Motion to close.
Motion by Elaine. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Montos. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So we will, I suppose we should take these somewhat separately.
Yeah, so I would suggest, for the ease of sort of categorizing everything, we'll call variance 1 the glass area for sign A, even though it's 4 signs, it's all of those together.
Yep.
Variance 2 would be the number, allowing that second sign on the side of the building toward the rear. Variance 3, I would suggest, would be the square footage, to allow 96 square feet where 53 is the maximum permitted. And variance 4 would be the height. It would be 12 feet where 2 are permitted.
All right. So we'll at least take the first one separately, and then we'll deal with the second and third and fourth as we get there. So variance 1 again is for sign A. So the front of for the front of the building, those 5 window panes. And this is for a variance of 70%, where 30% is permitted, and they're asking for 100% of glass coverage. So, as to whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of this variance.
No, the doorway is set back, it's recessed.
I think it's a very unique property. So it's a very small part of the building. So if most of the buildings have, most of the frontage on a building is glass. So you can understand why they'd want that 30%. I think the way this building is set up, that this is actually less than 30% of the front of the building. So I would say that I would grant it. It wouldn't not grant it. It wouldn't be any detriment.
I have an opposing point of view on that. I think it would be a detriment because I think it sets the wrong precedence. Or I think it set, let me say, I think it sets a precedence of allowing 100%. And with the neighborhood, as you said, a lot of the buildings there have a lot of glass frontage and are, I mean, you didn't say they're narrow, but they are narrow. So I think the precedence this sets is the detriment that it has.
I understand what you're saying, but wouldn't someone also have to come back and ask for another variance? I mean, this wouldn't change the law.
No, they would, every case is
Right.
unique, right? But what differentiates the approval of this versus the next one coming?
The sheer size of the front of the
We have a
building.
And that's what the
unique
risk
property.
of,
The sheer size of the
well,
front of the building.
let me just finish. That's the risk of setting a precedence, right? So are we going to set a metric on the size of the front that grant it, that doesn't make this negatively impactful? How do we protect us and how do we protect the city from the precedence this sets? We'd have to be specific in that to say what differentiates this from not being negatively impactful versus the next one that comes.
Could we do something with the, could we, because it's the size of the building. That's the whole thing. The frontage of the building is very large here.
Yeah.
And the door is quite small. So we could say, maybe we could set it up some way that we could take that into consideration so that another person couldn't come in with the 6x8 window and that's their whole storefront.
Yeah, I mean, we could, but are we,
I mean, when you look at the other storefronts in the area, what faces the street is mostly glass.
Right.
That's not the case
Yeah, no,
with
I
this
know it. I
building.
know that
On
very well.
ground level, what faces the street, this is not the largest percentage of it.
Right.
So that makes a difference on its effect on Main Street.
Than a regular
As
storefront.
opposed to a regular store with, knee-height to 10-foot windows across the whole face, filling their whole window. It's a very different look on the building than this would be.
And we don't think we
Especially when
can-
they have the glass all the way up above it.
And you don't think you can accomplish what you want to accomplish with the signage by being in the 30%? Is that what you're
It's for,
implying?
especially those side panels, it's just too little from the street to even see it. If it's 30%, it looks not
But
great.
you also have a perpendicular sign to the building.
That's even set higher up, there's no light on it, it's not very effective to put a little sign up. I mean, we couldn't even see that one. This one, the colored one.
Yeah.
There's no lights on to these window signs?
No.
Okay.
But I just mean the Savage Wonder sort of pop a little more on the sides than on the top. It gets kind of lost because that's even more recessed than the side panels.
So, I hear what you're saying, Montos. I don't know if we need to distinguish this application, but if someone comes and tries to say, oh, well, there's precedence, I think you can distinguish, Bank Square store frontage, if they came and wanted a sign covering their windows from this. You could, I would argue that this building is it's one of one
It's unique.
in this zone. And so, I'm less concerned about the precedence because I don't know if there is any other building that has these characteristics that someone else could say, oh, well, sure, anybody can make any argument, right? And so they could say, well, you allowed 100% signage on this building, but
We would
our
definitely have one.
counter arguments to that would be, sure, but this is set back, and the frontage, side to side is X, and yours is Y, and there also is non-covered glass above, although that was determined to be different. I think there's, for me, I'm not as worried about precedence, because I think there's enough. There are enough unique characteristics of this frontage to distinguish it from other frontages in the district.
And let's say we had a building that was unique in its area, that was a full garage door in the front, without naming, and decided to make that whole garage door one big glass sign.
We would have an argument for it. It wouldn't be the same thing. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not exactly the same thing, so they couldn't say, oh, well, you did it here, you have to do it here. We could say, no, it is really not the same thing. Because this door is such a small part of the front
Well,
of that
the
building.
good news is we're all articulating our difference of opinion.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I think we
Absolutely.
continue with the other factors.
Sure.
And also, we're missing a board member, so you also have the decision what you want to do, so.
We'll go there. So, as to whether the benefit the applicant seeks can be achieved through another method feasible to the applicant to pursue that does not require this area variance.
I would say no, because it's going to require some variance. Might not require this exact variance, but that wouldn't require a variance, no.
What purpose does the sign, the horizontal sign above the octopuses do? That
It's
to me
our
just-
brand colors and a little logo on the side. It has our, what are they called, pillars, our 4 pillars. Whimsical, absurd, jarring, I don't remember the last one because it's late, but so that's what it says.
Got it.
It's supposed to set the mood a little for what to expect downstairs.
I mean, they might be able to achieve it with somewhat smaller signs, but I don't think it actually would. They wouldn't get the same effect.
Well, I agree with that. This hits you.
Sort of the point.
All right.
What say you?
Me? I mean, I think, it's always a question of what is the benefit the applicant is seeking, right? I would argue the benefit the applicant is seeking is branding and recognition from the street of what they're doing. You probably, well, you could argue you could achieve that benefit from doing a myriad of other things, I suppose. A lot of stores have fold-out signs like Max's used to have, and Alps has, where they have a folding sign that they bring out every day. So if
Like a sandwich board.
yeah, and so the argument is, no one's going to know we're here because we're recessed. Well, the counter to that would be, well, you could have a portable sign that you bring out every day. This to me might be the weakest for me of the five factors. Not that it's determinative, but if you frame it from what is the benefit the applicant is seeking, and I think to me it's exposure.
Yeah, they're going to get a big bang for the buck.
We have the window space. We want to use it.
Yeah. All right. So with that being said, as to whether the requested variance is substantial.
Yes?
Yes?
Yes, according to the definition given, yes.
Yeah, I would say this one is, although again, not determinative. As to whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
No.
No.
I don't think it'll have an adverse effect, but it'll stand out.
Right, so I think certainly not on the environment, right? So I guess, I'd like to narrow it down. So will it have an impact on the physical conditions in the neighborhood? I mean,
Negative?
Sure.
We've had garbage bags up for a year, and
Yeah.
those were
Yeah,
allowed. So I'd like to make it look better.
adverse, right? I think adverse is subjective. I think art is subjective. This is art.
Yeah.
I don't think, for me, it is adverse. And as to whether the alleged difficulty is self-created,
Yes.
yes. And then, so here, perhaps the most important question is as to whether this is the minimum variance, the minimum request necessary, the minimum variance necessary.
I think it is, because I think what they're trying to do, at least at this point in time, is screen these windows while they're building out inside. So they're either going to put paper on the inside of the windows, like a lot of people do. Right now they have trash bags because they don't want anybody to be able to see all the equipment and everything else that's inside. So this is a beautiful, artful way that goes with the city so I think that this is the variance they need.
But the applicant said before that these might stay. So I don't think it's...
No,
they're-
not after we open. I don't see why we would want to cover the windows 100% once we open once we open these doors.
So after you open the doors, these go away?
The 100%, we wouldn't want to cover them 100% because
What are you going to cover? How much?
we'll stick to 30%.
Oh, once you open, you will go to
Yeah,
30%.
no, this is just
This
during
is
the
temporary.
construction. Yeah, this is a year and a half, because we're not starting construction until January, and it's going to take at least 6 to 8 months to build that space out. So we can't use this for a very long time.
So sign A is temporary.
Yes.
Sign B is permanent, sign C is permanent.
Yes.
So I didn't understand that in the beginning, so I apologize for
No,
my
I
ignorance
didn't
of
know
not
where to write
understanding
that.
that. Yeah, so this is in
This
lieu
is
of
while we're
the
in
existing
construction.
garbage bags.
Correct.
Okay.
It's,
The garbage bags are gone now.
Why didn't you say so?
well, because we had to take these down.
How come I had a problem
But I
with
think
these
we
two
just put the
things
colored
tonight? They
signs
weren't
up now?
very intuitive.
The colored signs. Yeah, right now we just have colored
Yeah,
signs.
all right.
Yeah, so right now, there are not garbage bags.
Well, because
that's
Brian
not-
told us that we could do just color without text. So
Yeah, right now
we
they
just
have a
color.
30% compliant sign in the window. So the garbage bags are gone, that's not, I just want to make that clear, it's not,
Yes, we
this
took the
would
garbage
replace
bags
garbage
down
bags.
last month.
They have 30% compliant signs in their
So let me
windows
call that
now.
window covering as opposed to a sign. You have,
It's yes.
you have coverage, but you want 100% coverage while you're under pre-opened, before opening.
Yes.
But once you're opened, you're going to comply with 30% or less on signage.
Correct.
Oh,
And this way, people are aware of you.
We
So
want
is
people
this,
to come
do
in.
we grant temporary?
So Brian, when establishments go under construction and they put the brown paper bags up on the windows, covering them 100%, I haven't seen them come here and ask us to do that. Why is this coming here and asking us for a variance?
Because the brown paper bag is not a sign.
So this is a sign because it has a picture or writing?
Because Wonder is the name of one of, like, the art gallery, Savage, I believe is.
Savage Wonder, it's Savage Wonderground is the gallery.
Yeah, it's the name of their business, Savage Wonder. It's not
So that's
just
the
words.
difference.
so they could just put brown paper bags up and be compliant?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's, yeah, the name, Wonder is a name of their business, and so it's
And
Savage.
the octopuses with the top hats?
Logos, I assume?
Yes, correct.
Logos.
It's our mascot.
It's your mascot. Got it. Thank you for helping me understand.
Okay.
Anytime.
Just out of curiosity, why do some octopuses have a monocle and some don't?
That's a good question. They're funky, they're smart, some of them are less smart.
Okay. And sorry,
That's what our
I'm sorry if
graphic
this is,
designer said.
sorry if this is asked and answered. So what is the plan after construction is complete?
We will keep the signs within compliance of the 30%.
Got it, okay. And, okay.
Of each panel.
And is there a way, I assume there is, to condition, yeah, okay, right.
If
So
the
I
concern
see.
is having these signs, having the variance for 100% coverage being in perpetuity, you can condition it on removing these signs at the completion of construction. The applicant at that point could either comply with the 30% or propose a different sign that requires
Sure.
the applicant to come back. But to alleviate the concern with this, you can condition that sign A, or sign A group, comes down at the end of, or issuance of CO, whatever you
Yeah,
want to
that's what I
call
was
it.
gonna say.
Yeah.
Issuance of the CO.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, we're good. I think, let's just take these separate, I think. So, can I have a motion on this variance, please?
Motion to approve?
Second.
With the condition that upon issuing a CO, these signs come down and everything stay within adherence, otherwise, new application for new respective variances.
Thank you. Second, Elaine?
Second.
Great. And I'll call the roll. Elaine?
Yes.
Montos?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
I am a yes. All right, so we have granted the first variance with the normal conditions and an additional condition that it is to be removed after the CO is issued. All right.
And sorry to interject,
go
just
for
in
it.
case you didn't hear the normal conditions that Jordan referred to, no permit or CO shall be issued until the applicant has paid in full all application and consultant fees. And the variances are void if the applicant fails to obtain a building permit within 6 months from the date of adoption of this resolution. To the extent that applies, commence construction within 6 months following the date of issuance of the building permit, or complete construction and obtain CO within 24 months after the issuance of the building
Do I
permit.
need a building permit for these signs?
I don't know, they have a building permit for the construction, right?
They do not have a permit to construct for the first floor, no.
Do they
And
need one?
this sign does not require a permit.
Okay. This is an interesting one.
Yeah,
Then, it could be the case that...
from the granting of,
Yeah, you could say from, yeah.
Well, maybe it should be a fixed,
Time period.
because in theory, they could never apply for it.
Yeah, do they need a permit for construction on the first floor? They do.
I would believe so. I do not know what
Yeah,
their
but they
plan
could-
is
they-
for
they
the
could just-
first floor.
They could just never apply for the permit for the first floor.
Yeah, except that they have to
I mean,
obtain
For
the
a
building
COO.
permit within 6 months from,
But they don't, because they don't need so they don't need a permit for the signs. So let's
Correct.
say they,
yeah, but tying it into the fact that it's for construction.
sure, but let's
Yeah. I
say
don't
they
think
go,
we're gonna start in 6
let's say they,
Say
not
we're
saying
not
this is
doing
gonna happen, let's say
construction.
they go bankrupt.
Yeah.
The variance is there for, in perpetuity, right? If no one ever applies for a building permit for the first floor. Of
That's
course,
it
it's their
forever.
intention today, but it could. So my question is, should it be
Time
time?
sensitive?
Let me revise my motion. My motion is to approve with the limitation that these signs stay up more than 6 months.
Stay up more than 6 months?
No more
No
than,
more than
no
6
more than
months.
6 months. And I think that's where the chairman was going, with a time factor.
Yeah, but she said they're
No,
not going to
because they
be
can't
ready
build
to
till
start the
January.
Yeah.
reno until
We
January.
have a grant that's not coming until January, so we can't even start.
And how long will it take to
It's
adjust?
going to be 6 months minimum.
Why
It's
don't
a
we
big
give it the
space.
24 months?
I was going to
Yeah.
say two
2
years
years.
and then
Give it
come
to
back for
24 months.
extensions.
Yeah.
Fine. 2 years and come back with for extension.
Thank you.
All right, so. Yeah. It's 2
We don't blame
it's
you,
2
Mercedes.
years. It's 2 years from tonight.
2
We
years
don't
from
know what we're
tonight.
talking about.
Yeah.
We already kind of voted
By
on it.
Montos, 2 years from tonight.
Yeah.
We already kind of voted on it?
We were retroactive.
With the
I
condition
suppose.
that the signs stay up no more than 2 years from tonight. Yep.
And stay in good condition?
Great.
Because I can't issue with a permit.
Yep, and stay in good condition.
And stay in good condition.
All right, so we're gonna add those conditions.
Very generous chairman gave you 2 years. I would have given you 6 months.
Well, hopefully we don't need it for 2 years, but thank you, thank you.
Okay, all right, so, yes. Oh, yes.
Yes.
And that they have to come down at the issuance of
Yeah,
CO.
so there's three conditions. One, they have to pay. Two, it's 2 years. And three is they have to come down at the conclusion of
The issuing of the
the
CO.
issuance of the CO.
So 2 years or the issuance of a CO
Great.
Yes.
Yes,
would be
whichever.
the good way to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then compliance thereafter with the sign code.
Okay. And so we'll take the existence of the second/third sign,
That's fine.
separate from the square footage. So first, we want to determine if we
did
want to
we-
allow it at all. All right, so,
That's this.
yeah, this is for just having a second sign, we'll call it. Hold on a second. So this is a variance where a maximum of one sign affixed to an outer wall of the structure is permitted, and a second sign is proposed. So it's just, again, we're calling the first sign is the one that is hanging on Main Street, and this is a second sign, so it's just,
Right.
that's what it is. So we're going to go through, again, the factors as to whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting of this area variance.
No, it's a parking lot.
Are we talking about the same sign? Are you talking about
Yeah,
the
we're-
perpendicular
this one-
sign?
we're
No,
talking about
this one.
this
You're
sign.
talking about this
See.
one here?
Correct. The perpendicular sign is approved and
Got
not
it,
part of
got
the
it, got it.
application.
Okay, got it.
So this is the fact that a second sign exists.
Yes.
I say it's not a detriment because the building has more than one entrance on more than one street.
Yeah.
Therefore, to identify it, makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't see how yes, it is a second sign because it happens to be on the same building, but for all intents and purposes, it's
not even
not.
on the
You're
same
not.
street.
You're not. Correct. It's nowhere near the other sign, and it will not produce a negative, undesirable change. As to whether the benefit the applicant seeks can be achieved through another method feasible for the applicant to pursue that does not require an area variance.
I would say no.
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 No, I think if you frame it as the applicant wants to identify that this is an entrance to their business from the back, no, they need a sign in the back. Right. As to whether the requested variance is substantial.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't see it as substantial because the signs are in such different areas. They're not interrelated.
Well, it could be considered substantial because a sign is supposed to be 2 feet by 2 feet.
Well, I think
Well, that's
that's the,
different.
yeah, we're not,
Different line.
So,
yep.
it's a second sign, but it's much larger, so it's not a 2-foot by 2-foot sign hanging off the side. It's a poster type sign. So, I think it's substantial.
All right. As to whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district.
No.
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 No, I don't think it affects either of those things at all. As to whether the alleged difficulty is self-created.
Yes.
Or maybe, no.
No, it is. As to whether this is the minimum variance necessary and adequate to preserve and protect the character, neighborhood, health, safety, and welfare of the community.
I think it's fine.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna. Well, all right. Can I have a motion on this variance, please?
Motion to approve, allowing a second sign
Second?
All right.
in the back, I'm sorry, on this particular wall.
Yes. So the proposal is for a second sign in the location that it is presented in the application. We have a motion by Montos and a second by Elaine, or
No,
reverse?
the other way.
A motion by
I don't
Elaine,
know.
second by Montos, and I'll call the roll. Judy?
Yes.
Montos?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
And I am a yes. All right. And so now as to the dimensions of the sign, I think I'll take these together. So these are two variances. So this is,
Oh, I didn't understand that.
yep, this is to whether, where the maximum aggregate area of each sign is 53 square feet. And just for clarification while I go through this, is that based on where the sign, like, is that based on this district? Is that based on this wall? How is that?
It's based on the linear frontage of the building. There's nothing in the code that says sidewalls.
So
Linear-
based on-
We went off the linear frontage of the building. The building's 53 foot wide.
On Main Street,
Yeah.
not the back entrance.
So it's, okay, so it's determined,
No sign shall.
Again, that's kind of why we're a variance, because we have this odd.
so the 53 square feet is based on a calculation from the front?
So the aggregate area of each sign shall not exceed 1 square foot for each linear foot of building facing the street.
Even though this sign is not anywhere, yeah, okay,
I
right.
guess you could say it's facing South Street, but I interpret, I used Main Street.
Okay.
Because it does not abut south. The building abuts Main and Commerce.
So when you took the total for the signs, you took all 3 signs into account and compared that to the linear footage of the front?
I did not take all 3 because the window signs didn't come into play. It was a percentage, not a linear
And the
footage, I should.
And the
that's-
square footage is
that's the
for
word.
each sign. The code is that it's section 223-15E1A. The aggregate area of each such sign shall not exceed 1 square foot for each linear foot of building facing the street.
What's the total linear footage of the frontage?
I believe it's 53.
53,
Yeah.
got it.
Therefore, it's a 53 square foot, 1-to-1, 53 square foot max. The applicant is proposing 96 square feet.
Yeah, I did not deduct the projecting sign, if that was, the 16-foot projecting sign was not deducted off of the 53 to come up with the allotted signage for the wall signs.
Got it.
And just for our understanding, do you know what the frontage is on this side?
I really wanted to get the measurements before I came here. The back side is just as wide as the front side, so it's 54 feet, and then this wall is wider where the sign is actually going to be.
Okay, all right, so, yeah.
I tried to bring this thing to see if it would have the measurements on it, but it doesn't. It's just the
Okay.
longitude,
All right,
latitude.
So, I mean, one could argue 53 versus 96, or 53 thereabouts, assuming the side is the same linear footage as the front. If it were,
Well, it would be, it's also based on the language of the code. Each linear foot of building facing the street. So there's 2 streets, Commerce and
Yeah.
Main. If it's 53 on both sides,
Yeah.
it's 53.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah,
53 versus
contextualizing the side of the building that the actual sign is on is good for context, but
Yeah.
the measurement, the square footage, right, Brian, is based on Main Street's width or Commerce. and
Yeah,
it's the
that's
same
my
thing.
interpretation, the street,
Mhm.
that, it does not say the street that it abuts,
Mhm.
but I'm interpreting it as the street that it abuts.
Mhm. So
And it
this-
abuts Main or Commerce, and the building is a rectangle. So
And it's flush to the building as opposed to being perpendicular to the building.
So this sign is no bigger linear footage-wise than what we just approved on the doors. So,
No, it is.
It is?
it is?
This sign is 96 square feet.
In the doors, the dimensions on the doors?
Or-
36
Have to be at
square
least
feet.
that.
They're like 50, like 7 feet or something like that.
No, they're much smaller. The-
10
the
foot?
window panes are much
10 by
smaller.
what?
10 foot by like 15 inches? It's
right there.
But it's 22 and a half inches wide.
Well,
by
I'm looking at the whole
104
door
inches.
dimension.
10 by 22 and a half, right?
I'm looking at
Oh, each one.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the whole.
I mean, I think
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
total
Yeah,
area-wise.
yeah, if you're looking at the entire aggregate of the door, no, it's probably
So this one
smaller.
is
It's probably
significantly
smaller.
smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me,
eyes.
yeah.
And just so we don't run into the thing that we ran into before, is this sign meant to be a long-term, this is meant
This-
to be a permanent sign?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we will always use that back entrance and there will
So I have
always be
a
brick wall.
kind of an aside question. So that the sign or banner that had hung out of Bank Square for years.
Yes.
Did that ever get a variance, or was that not considered a sign? Does anyone know that?
I don't think it came before us.
I don't know about the one Bank Square, but the one across the street, the real big one came to us years ago. There's a real big one on the left side.
Oh, really? The ape guy?
Is that an ape? I don't know. I don't understand art, so
Like a
don't.
troll?
Yeah, yes, that came to us years ago.
It did.
Oh,
Yes.
sure, yeah. Yep.
So this isn't to me.
I'll go with you on that.
Yeah, to me, this is not out of character.
No, me neither.
And it's significantly smaller than what we've looked at in the past and considered.
All right, so we have, for the square footage, we have 43 square foot variance. This is a 96 square foot proposed sign, where a 53 square foot sign is permitted. And then the second dimensional prohibition, I suppose, is there is 2 feet. And is that, and sorry, is that in context of anything, or is it just is that relative to a wall where 2 feet is permitted?
No such sign shall exceed 2 feet in height, except at a vertical projecting sign, a wall hanging sign.
Okay, so, right, so this is a variance, a 10-foot variance, so this is a sign, so it's not just the square footage, it's the height, so,
Is that height actually 12 feet of the picture?
Of the actual picture, yes.
It is.
Yes.
so it is a 10-foot variance, where they're asking for a 12-foot sign, where a 2-foot sign is permitted, so it's 2 variances. The fact that it's 12 feet total height, and then 43 square feet.
I would say it's totally unique from a perpendicular sign. It's,
That's also why the code, so the code, as Brian was reading, distinguishes in terms of the height. It's a maximum of 2 feet in height, except a vertical projecting wall sign shall not exceed 8 feet, so they get more space. And then it goes on to say a vertical projecting wall sign is defined as any sign which is attached to a building wall or structure which is perpendicular to the face of such wall or structure. So, I guess imagine, it's not imagine, it's a perpendicular, something hanging perpendicularly.
because it's on the wall? It's
Yeah.
So that's our
perpendicular to
sign
the
B,
front?
is like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're thinking of,
So it's 8 foot's allowed, they're asking for 12.
No, 8 feet would be allowed if it was a perpendicular, if it was a
hanging.
vertical projecting wall sign. Because you were just saying how this is different from a perpendicular sign, the code would agree. If it was a perpendicular sign, they would be allowed, Brian, correct me if I'm
Correct,
wrong,
no,
8
you're
feet.
Is
correct.
there anything in the code for something that's
For this,
flush
it's
sign?
2 feet,
so like this.
2 feet in height.
So,
This is permitted,
Flush.
this
Yeah.
is permitted.
Okay.
Right, so like that's what they're,
yeah, I believe it's looking for like a wall sign above a business, like an entrance. That's what the 2 feet is max. The projecting is if you wanted to hang a banner or something along those lines, or a marquee.
yeah,
I'm
that's not
thinking
it.
of it more like a mural, almost.
That's, Yes, that's our
That's kind of
intention.
what I'm thinking, like the library has a
down.
big
Yeah,
mural
let's-
on it.
down
The
here.
liquor store down at the end of the street has a gigantic mural on it.
Right, so this is the one that I was talking
It's
about.
kind of different than.
Like, why is that?
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
So
okay.
I think we might need to, she might, I don't know.
All right, so let's go through the,
And Jordan, are we
She might not
considering
really-
both of the height and, are these deliberations going to be both for height and for square footage?
Yes.
Same considerations? Okay.
I just, dimensionally, yeah.
Dimensional. But
Yep.
we'll keep them as different variances, but the rationale will apply to both.
Yes, all right. So as to whether an undesirable change will be reduced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of these variances.
No.
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 No, and I think it's relevant to point out the other art in that district.
Art installations,
Yeah.
yeah. It's more of that.
As to whether the benefit the applicant seeks can be achieved through another method feasible for the applicant to pursue that does not require these area variances.
No.
Not as efficiently, no.
I agree, not as efficiently.
I agree. As to whether the requested variances are substantial.
I don't think so.
No.
I think mathematically they are, especially the height one. But I don't think in the context of what they're attempting to achieve they are.
I agree. In accordance to what other installations are in the city that are similar to this.
As to whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
No, I don't
No.
think so.
I don't think it'll have any impact. As to whether the alleged difficulty is self-created.
Yes.
Yes. And as to whether we find that the requested variances are or are not the minimum variances necessary and adequate to preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and health, safety, and welfare of the community.
I say yes.
I mean, you could cut a foot off or something like that, but I don't think it would make a meaningful difference in anything.
I don't think this threatens the safety of the neighborhood or the well-being of the neighborhood, so I think it's fine.
All right. And as to conditions, so this, all fees will be paid. And then again, there's no permit that is necessary for this, correct?
There is one for this. This is a wall sign. This will require
Oh,
a
this is a
permit.
permit?
This will require a permit, yes.
Not from Architecture Review Board, from you? Because it's not on there.
I gotta look into that.
Okay.
I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I would like, if one of the conditions, could we figure out a height of this sign?
Like placement?
Physically height, yes.
Do you have that information? Do you know how high?
Well, looks like it's 5-ish feet off the ground to start. Right, just for my picture.
I don't have a preference, I would just
We
like a
haven't
number.
hung it yet, obviously,
Sure.
so we can hang it however high you'd like us to hang it.
So all right, so we'll do, all fees have to be paid.
Hung in the direction of the building department?
Well,
Yeah.
No.
I think he wants sure, but I think he wants like a limit so he could enforce it in theory. So we'll call it 5 feet off the ground, so 17 feet high. And then the permit has to be filed within 6 months, and
Basically, the same as our typical conditions for a building
Yeah.
permit, except this is for a sign permit.
Yep.
So you will have to obtain a sign permit within 6 months from the date of this resolution. Put up the sign, I guess, within 6 months following the date of issuance of that permit. And there is no complete construction or obtained CO.
right. So it's apply for the permit within 6 months of the date of the issuance, and then actually putting the sign up within 6 months of that. Okay. Can I have a motion?
Go ahead, Montes, you're good at these.
Do I have to repeat everything you said? Motion to approve based on, including everything Justin just said.
Jordan, but
Jordan,
yeah.
Jordan. What did I say, Justin? Jordan. You threw me off with all that fancy
Can I
stuff.
have a second, please?
Second.
All right. Motion by Montos, second by Judy, and then I'll call the roll. Elaine?
Yes.
Montos?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
And I am a yes.
And can we just have another motion, just for the record, for variance number 4? We
Yes.
considered them together, but that was a vote on variance number 3. Let's have a, just to keep it clean.
Can I have a second motion, please?
On what?
Approving variance number 4, which is for the height, with the same conditions as just discussed. Again, they were considered together, but technically a separate variance.
Motion to approve variance number 4 on the height of the sign,
With the conditions.
with the conditions from the previous.
That Jordan said, not Justin.
Thank you. So
From
motion by Judy, can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Elaine, and then we'll call the roll. Judy?
Yes.
Montos?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
And I am a yes. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Motion by Judy, can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Montos, all in favor? Aye. And the next meeting is, for the record?
She did a good job.
22nd? Oh, 15th. All right, so our next meeting is July 15th, and we will see you then. Thank you.
So